Welcome to our continuing budget hearings, the joint budget hearings for the Board of Selectmen, for the Board of Finance, for the fiscal year 2013 budget. Would everyone please rise? Now, I know we have at least 3 former Girl Scouts in the room, with Ms. Holland, Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey, and Mrs. LeClaire, and tonight is the 100th anniversary of the Girl Scouts, rather. So we want to wish them happy birthday, and we want to ask all our former Girl Scouts to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Tonight, we have a rather lengthy list of departments and organizations, but I'm hopeful that we'll get through it quite quickly. We have the Finance Department, Purchasing, Administrative Services, the Assessor, the Tax Collector, Information Technology, the Board of Finance, Unemployment Compensation. Then on the Culture and Recreation side, we have the Library, Penfield Pavilion, Parks and Recreation, Waterfront and Marina, the Carl Dickman Golf Course, and the H. Smith Richardson Golf Course. And then we have the miscellaneous not-for-profit organizations towards the end of the evening. I believe Jerry mentioned beforehand that we're live tonight on Fair TV. Is that right, Jerry? So no tape delay, no editing. So be cautious. All right. So with that in mind, we're going to go to page 145 in our budget books, which is the Finance Department. Mr. Hiller, welcome. Thank you for the narrative within your department.
Wanted to check the angle from this side of the table.
We don't look any better from this end.
All right. Before we get knee-deep into the budget, we will notice there's an extra line tonight within the finance budget, which is $1 million, which is for the proposed supplemental contribution to the town surplus fund. And Mr. Tetreau and Mr. Hiller, you can speak about that, or we can speak about that when we talk about fund balance on the 20th. So please.
Thank you,
This is
Mr.
page
Chairman.
145, 146.
I think, the budget itself is clearly pretty much a status quo budget with that one major exception. And it's your call as to when we discuss it. The first selectman discussed it at in the opening comments before this board 2 weeks ago. We had to find a home for it, and we just felt that this was the proper place to put it. I can address it very briefly, and as I said, I know the first selectman addressed it before. I think really what it is, it's an effort to enhance our fund balance. As this board is aware, we're at the lower end of the many neighboring towns and other towns throughout the state. And when you look at medians for AAA communities in the state, we're at the lower end as far as percentage of operating budget compared to as a percent of fund balance. And this is an effort to enhance that, and it has been done before in several communities, most notably locally in the town of Wilton has done it in the recent history, when they had an issue with it that was cited by the rating agencies.
Mr. Hiller, quickly, what is our current fund balance as a percentage of the operating budget?
Slightly over 5%, and the averages are closer to 10.
What is the, if we do this $1 million supplemental contribution, what will that raise us to as a
I haven't calculated
percentage?
that. I could calculate that specifically, but, and obviously that would relate, all. And remember this, you're talking a fund balance for the end of fiscal 13.
Yeah.
We're not able to say right now what we are for the end of 12.
Right.
The slightly over 5%.
Do you have a projection?
That's a tough question. It's a tough question is at the end of the year. We're confident, as we've said at the quarterly review meetings, that we appear to be operating in the black as far as this year is concerned. There's so many things out there as far as, first off, this budget has not been adopted. I would say this, I don't think that we would be approaching the 10% level as many other communities are. But
No,
I
but
think
would
it
we be-
stabilizes us and makes our trend up, and this would be 5 straight years now that we have operated with positive numbers and been able to increase our levels.
Okay, let's put it another way then. Let's assume we're flat for this year, okay? We don't add to it, we don't take away with it, we come in where we are. We'd be at 5%, right?
Well, realize this also, that you've got an increase in the budget, and the budget is going up each year, and so you've got percentages that have to,
I understand. I want to know
with it.
what the $1 million is going to get us to within spitting distance.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hiller can run the numbers and provide that in detail. I looked at this as a multi-year approach.
Yep,
I didn't look at this as just doing this for 1 year.
Yep.
Because it's not going to get us close to 10%.
oh, I'm fully aware.
All right, so we're at say 5%. We have a $270 million budget. If you allow me to
Yep.
use round numbers until Mr. Hiller gets the
Yep.
detail. That puts it at roughly 13.5.
Yep. We're already
60.
close to that.
Roughly
14.
13.5 as at 5%. If we don't add to that number, and you're right, we look like we're going to come in flat or roughly flat. Certainly, I wouldn't count on finishing in the black to be something that would cause our surplus to keep pace. So in looking at that, we said if we put $1 million in this year, that's going to be a hit on the tax increase. We took advantage of the fact there's some other costs, health insurance, electricity, pension costs that weren't going up as much as we may have expected, to say, let's use that money to be productive. If we put it in this year, next year, the $1 million will still be there. The year after that, the $1 million will still be there. And it will be more than 5% of the tax increase, the dollars in. We're going up $9 million this year.
So if we look at this, though, if you're at roughly 5 now, if you're at 13.5, the budget goes to 270, we put $1 million in, you're at 14.5, your rough number is 5.37%. So you're incrementally a little bit better, but you're not dramatically improving it towards that 10%. It's all incremental.
Correct. You know, as we sat with discussions with this board over the last couple of years in a tough economy, we chose not to do anything directly towards doing that. We looked at a couple different approaches and thought that it was best to take at least a step in the right direction, realizing that this will have a multiple-year impact as it stays in the budget, and each year helps us stay ahead of what our tax increase is, so that moves that up. At any point, we have the ability to increase this if we chose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hiller. Thank you, Mr. Tetreau. Questions, comments from board members on this budget? Anybody? Quickly, is the, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. McCarthy-Vahey, I didn't see you.
No, and I don't know if, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Mr. Hiller. I'm not sure if this is the right place to talk about this, but just to note the ongoing requests for studies related to post-retirement benefits, and perhaps that's something that's part of the pension board conversation. Perhaps that's something that this board wants to discuss, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate here or elsewhere.
Are you
Just to
talking
bring
the
up
need
as an
for a
item.
study?
Correct.
A little bit of history. When we did one 3 or 4 years ago, we actually added those funds into the Board of Finance's budget itself
Okay.
in the separate department. That way, A, we could control it, and the study would come directly back to us, and then we could distribute that study as requested. So that's an option, or you can make another proposal.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Leave it there for now.
Any other questions? Mr. Hiller, the salary's going up by 3.87%. What's that based on? Is that
primarily driven, several of the employees within the department, several of the full-time employees, specifically 4 employees are members of the Town Hall Employees Union.
So that's a locked contract, right?
That is a contract.
Yep.
There are 3 employees who are members of the Professional and Technical Union who have not been, whose contract has not been settled. Additionally, my own salary was increased, as all department heads were increased on July 1st by 2%. And that was not reflected in last year's, or in the current year's budget. So there's really 5 out of 8 full-time employees in which there has been, in the case of the town hall employees budget, it's a 2-year increase. In my own case, it's a 1-year increase.
Quick question, did all department heads get salary increases last year as well?
As of July 1st, all, yes,
What was that percentage?
2%.
So it was 2% last year, and it's,
2% as of July 1st of 11.
right, and now this is budgeted to be 2% as of July 1st.
Well,
of
that
20.
salary is carried forward to July 1st of 12.
I understand that, but is this estimating a 2% increase?
No, it does not, it does not anticipate an increase as of that, those numbers are carried within the contingency account.
Okay, is there a provision within the contingency account for a 2% increase for
Yes.
department heads?
If you'll allow me not to be specific about the
Yeah.
percentage, the answer is yes.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, we'll go to the public on this budget. None, back to the board. Thank you, Mr. Hiller. We're done with the finance budget. We'll go to the purchasing department budget. This is going up from $294,660 to $301,242 in the projected next year.
Good evening.
Evening. The largest line item increase is in regular payroll, which is going up by a little over $10,000,
Yes.
correct? Do you
Yes.
wanna- I assume that's where the question will be? People want to speak to us about that a little bit?
I think were it not for that, everything else has stayed flat, or in the case of advertising, is reduced. So all our increases are due to personnel costs.
And again, is that the union contract, or what is
Yes,
this?
it is.
So
Yes.
this is all FIA-based?
It is.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
if I might, just because this process relates to all departments.
Yep,
The department heads do not plug in their number for salary or salary-related costs. Those
Yep.
come from Ms. Gardner. So those, in essence, are all handed to them
yep.
as part of that. But those, the components that Ms. Holland described are the components of the increase.
Thank you. Yes, I was aware of that. What I wanted to make sure is which ones are actually the result of union contracts versus the ones that are not. And that's really, is specifically
In-
a settled union
In
contract.
putting together this budget, there was only one settled contract,
Right,
the THEA contract.
right, and I want to know.
So
is
it's
it-
the THEA increases plus any potentially longevity steps that a given union may get are what's in here. That's
Okay.
it. All the other contract,
Are in contingency,
our potential
yeah.
agreements are in contingency.
Yep.
As is the fire, because that was so recently done.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. DeWitt?
Good evening, Ms. Holland.
Good evening.
Are we seeing the decrease in the advertising due to our new purchasing rules?
I believe so. Yes.
That's good news. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Mrs. McCarthy-Vehy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Holland. I know that you'll be hiring a new employee hopefully soon, as soon as possible for you. And just looking at the education and membership line and wondering if those funds are sufficient in terms of training a new employee, and if you're comfortable with that.
I didn't anticipate a new employee when this budget was prepared. I believe we can operate within that. You may see, depending on the skill set that the individual, the new hire has, you may see a request for more money in next year's budget. But what we're trying to do is to do more webinars, which are a considerably lower cost.
It's a huge.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Quick question on, and this might be to Ms. Gardner, your junior buyer position. I'm just asking because the percentages don't work out. It looks like a salary increase of 8.75% there.
Overall, the Thea increase for the 3 years is an 8.1% increase, and she probably also received a step.
Can we just follow up on that?
I will do so.
Just, thank you. It's a large percentage. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anything? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. None from the public, back to the board. Thank you, Ms. Allen.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where else? Administrative services.
Administrative services.
Yeah, let's stay. Okay, we'll stay with you, I'm sorry. I have the assessors next. Okay, we go to this. You know what it is? The book is in a different order. Administrative services. Yeah,
Page 45.
45. That's what was confusing. Okay. All right. Page 45 is the narrative. Page 46 and 47 are the numbers. So we have 100,428 last year, 101,180 this year. So, anybody have any questions or comments on this budget? Okay, seeing that, quick one. Last year, did we have a budgeting error in this area last year, or was that, there was one of the areas that we had a budgeting error for communication services or something. That wasn't here.
No, the communications budget hasn't been in admin services
Yeah.
for several years.
I
so
just want to
don't
make sure where we
know.
had you here, because I thought there was an error last year. Okay. Follow up. All right. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Seeing none, back to the board now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we'll see you soon. Back to page 151, the assessor. Good evening. And welcome.
To be hired.
Thank you very much,
The first time's always fun.
Don Ross. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Okay, page 151 is the narrative, page 152 and 153 are the numbers. Anyone, questions, comments on the assessor's budget? Mr. Belita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the budget summary, they have, you have an increase of $114,000 for fees and professional services to provide for appraisal and consulting services for the pending court actions regarding the revaluation. Is any portion of that legal in nature, or is that strictly so?
No.
Mr. Tetreau, is there a portion of the legal services budget when we get to it that's going to contain something for this? Okay, thank you.
In addition to?
Yeah, the money that we're spending on attorneys will be in the legal services budget. The money that we're spending here is spent on appraisers and support for that.
Mr. Brockfeld?
For either Mr. Tetreau or, I'm sorry, what's your name again, sir?
Don Ross.
Welcome to the, that's okay, welcome to the hot seat, as Tom said.
Thank you.
Medium warm.
Yeah, it's not that bad. For the 114,000 and for the challenges, I guess, to some of the tax bills, are some of the costs borne by the consultant that we had, or the group that did the appraisals in the first place? In other words,
Simple answer, no. In fact, they do come to support our efforts, and Don, I think it's 5 hours per
Right.
appeal.
Correct.
That is part of that, that's built into the contract. So in essence, we get 5 hours of support time for free.
so could you just
Okay, let me make a, yeah, it's 5 court days per court action. Is the support.
5 court days?
For
So that's even more than 5
Per
hours.
court action, that was the support that was contracted in the last reassessment
Okay, so
contract.
that's a lot more than 5 hours, most
It
likely.
was, it was 5 days.
So could
per
you just
court
briefly,
action.
I apologize, go ahead. You have to speak into the mic a little more, I couldn't hear.
I'm learning.
Yeah, that's okay. Could you just tell us then, so if we have the, whoever it was who did the, I forget the name of the company that did the evaluation, they're going to be coming for 5 court days per appeal.
right.
So what other types of support are we hiring other than legal that would cause us to spend $114,000?
Okay, it's real estate counseling. If I may, I have a projection I'd like to hand to the board.
Okay.
What I did is I selected the major cases that we're going to be looking at within the next fiscal year.
My caution, Don, is let's not give away anything that sheds light on the strategy or what our approach is there.
Okay, okay.
I think that the simple answer is, especially in commercial cases, and of the 170, 40 are commercial, there's typically, and we've been advised that you need another appraisal done on top of that.
Okay,
All right, so that's on advice of counsel in terms of what we need to bring to the table
gotcha, okay.
to provide with that.
So that's in addition to the, right. And would that be the bulk of the 114?
I think that's all of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? No one? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Any questions on this budget? Seeing none, we'll come back to the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure. And congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go to the tax collector. The last hurrah.
The last time is even more fun.
Should we play Old Lang Syne for this guy?
All right. So budget's gone from 718,808 to 739,591, a 2.89% increase. The vast majority of that being in the payroll line.
Right, I have five members of the THEA union.
Right.
And that's the reason for the increase in payroll at this point.
Okay. No change in number of staff.
No.
Okay. Questions, comments from board members? Mr. Bolito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might dovetail a little bit with IT, but I know that when we were implementing the Munis system, one of the advantages was that there was a module that would allow us to get more online access for residents to tax information and maybe eventually be able to pay their taxes online, which would maybe obviate the need for people going up to the counter and, getting duplicate bills and whatnot. Where are we with that in terms of implementing it, or is it something that's still a ways off?
Well, I mean, people can currently pay their taxes online, current taxes
To
only.
Official Payments Corp., right?
No, we're using MCC,
Oh, okay,
Metropolitan
different company.
Communications.
Okay.
And we have been for 5 years.
Right.
So people have had that ability for that length of time. There is a new module that is coming with our new software called Invoice Cloud, which would not only allow people to pay online, but will remind them when taxes are due as well.
Right.
If they sign up through email. So that is coming, but first we have to get the new system installed, which is in progress at this point.
Right. Do you anticipate that once that's up and running, that will alleviate some of the pressure on the people who actually work in the office who do counter duty every morning or every afternoon?
I can't really predict that at this point,
Right.
because it all depends on how many people decide to use the online system.
Right.
Right now, we're at about 2%
Yeah,
that
very
is
low.
using the online system, so it's very low.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Mr. Brockfeld.
Thanks. On that same topic, the current system, which I won't dwell on because you say a new one is coming, only 2% use it. Do the taxpayers have to pay any additional costs above their tax bill in order to pay their taxes online currently?
There is a service fee involved. If you do a direct debit from a checking account, there's a charge of 35 cents per payment. per payment.
Okay.
Okay? If you decide to do it by credit card, there's a service charge of approximately 3%
Well, that- okay,
of the
that's-
of the
sure.
amount that you're paying.
Sure, that makes sense.
That does not come to the town, that goes to the credit card company. It's something that's built into retailers' prices, but we can't do that, so it's charged separately.
Sure. And then the new system that you described that will be better, will notify taxpayers when their taxes are due and all that stuff.
Yes.
Will that also be essentially costless to the taxpayer on top of their tax bill?
Well, it'll be costless to the town, but it will cost the taxpayer something, along the same lines as our current system.
Let me ask the question differently. The 35 cents that they're paying now per payment, you said?
Yes.
Is that covering the town's costs of running that system? Or
There is no cost to the town to run the system.
Okay.
Their fee comes from that 35 cents or the service charge on the
Right,
credit
okay,
cards.
okay. And that'll
So
be the
the town pays nothing for
And
that.
that'll be the same going for the new one. I mean, only reason I ask is that I'm trying to figure out why we only have I mean, this is a very sophisticated town, highly educated, I assume virtually 100%, internetable. And so I'd be surprised that only 2% are paying their taxes.
Many, many people prefer to come to the counter, believe it or not, even in this day and age.
Yep, okay.
Ms. McCarthy-Vahey, did you have a question? You did not?
Yes, I do. As a
Please, and then I'll
follow-up.
go to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Gorslani, for your years of service. We're going to miss you here. Mine is a follow-up, actually. I happen to be one of that 2%, and I think it's a great thing to do, and I know that many other departments, such as Parks and Rec, have gone largely automated, and I'm wondering about the postage line and noticing that it's going up. So when we have that new system, can we anticipate that the postage line will go down so that we can, as we collect emails, then invoice folks in that manner? Is that something that is being looked at?
By state statute, we are still required to send a bill, so that would not change the postage line for us. Let's put it this way, if more people are reminded when to pay their bills, it could reduce our costs to prepare delinquent notices as a follow-up.
Okay.
So, currently, we don't send reminders, and many people do forget. I know this because we sent out delinquent notices last week, and they all came to the office today. So,
Familiar with that, too.
We'll go to Mr. Kiley, and then we'll...
I just wanted to comment, hopefully, we've been in the process for the last 3 months of installing the new software, and with the idea that we may be able to go live for the April collection period. One of the enhancements, shall we say, are some of the things that we've talked about here, which may in time, I think it's going to be hard for us to measure what things are, and certain things, as Mr. Gorslani points out also, like the postage account. Will the legislature make changes within state statute that will allow us to do internet billing and stuff like that, which will save us? One thing that we will be able to do is what's called club billing for motor vehicles. In other words, if you have 3 vehicles, you're not going to get 3 separate pieces of mail. You're going to get 1 piece of mail and things like that, which will save us. Mr. Leslie can address some of this when he comes up too, but these are some of the things, also your ability to look up not only yours, but your neighbor's tax bills and see if they've paid is going to be out there.
Thank you, Mr. Hiller. Mr. Kiley, you had a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan, thank you for all your years.
thanks.
Quick question. Back to the credit card payment piece of the tax bills. Can you remind me where the credit card charge shows in the budget?
The credit card charge does not appear in the budget. It's something that is paid by the taxpayer when they make their tax payment online. But it's not, it doesn't come through the town.
Okay, so, yeah, that I get. So they pay $1, the bank keeps 3 cents, the town gets 97 cents, roughly, correct?
No.
No, they pay the full amount of the
They
tax
pay
plus
$1.03.
3%.
Oh, they have to pay above and beyond?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no discount or any, no. No, they
And
have to pay the full amount of the tax.
So,
Then it's the net amount that the town sees $1 no matter how you pay. The question is, if you charge it, the credit card, you charge $1.03, the credit card company keeps 03 and sends $1 through to us.
net, we're good to the dollar, and the taxpayer pays the fee to the bank?
Correct.
Okay.
And you record everything in net, not gross, so you're not
Absolutely.
recording the 103 plus the 3-cent expense. You're just recording the dollar net.
Correct.
Right, I don't see either side of that, right?
Right.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, guys.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We'll go to the public. Seeing none, Mr. Gorzelani, you've already been thanked for your years of service. I'd like to echo those comments, but I'd also like to wish you congratulations.
Thank you.
And I hope that you enjoy your retirement and that maybe you'll come here just for fun some night.
I may do that just for fun. Well, and actually, if I could just have a moment, I'd like to thank the members of this board and the past members of this board, because they've always been very supportive of the tax office. And, you know, we've worked together through a lot of different things, and, you know, the results, I think, speak for themselves.
Yes,
Thanks
I would
again.
agree. Thank you very much. You know, not, everybody claps when the tax collector leaves, I guess.
Hang out with Tom Brown.
All right. Let's go to the information technology budget. Mr. Leslie, welcome. All right.
So you're all being heard at the correct volume because my wife did a sound check before we...
Great. Thank you. So we're at, last year's budget was $1,478,912. The proposed budget for this year is $1,473,560. A little bit below, so about 0.36% below. So on the whole, good, but let's get into the details of it. So, do you have any opening comments you'd like to make?
I guess so. I mean, might as well sort of cut to the chase. We were told to keep the budget tight, so that's what I did. I have two big things coming in this budget, which is the diskless backup system, which we need, and that was $30,000. And then the other thing was the software, patch software for the new operating system. Because we're locking down the new operating systems, we need to be able to update them remotely, and that's what the software does for us. It gives us all the Adobe updates and everything else. And so those are the two big things in the budget, and I did a little stealing out of my capital formula to pay for the diskless system, and that's why I'm basically at a zero budget, give or take a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Questions, Mr. DeWitt, and then we'll go to Mr. Bolito.
Good evening.
Evening?
I noticed on your summary that you're now including funding for Fair TV. What is,
Oh, right, that was the other big thing.
Yeah, what is that $20,000 really doing other than us having the pleasure of Jerry's company?
Traditionally, Fair TV's been supported through the CAC, and if everybody's been hearing about the rumors and stuff, the problem with Fair TV was that we never had consistent money that we could count on. We were always going into a pool that we shared with the 6 other towns of only $100,000 to run 6 towns worth of TV, and that can include 2 channels per town, which what we do is the thing, and some towns just do 1 channel depending on how many staff they have or whatever. And so it was never guaranteed numbers, and there was some controversy over labor dollars in that money, and that was finally resolved last year that we could use it for labor dollars. To have a quality Fair TV doing what we do, we need some more funding, and we needed it consistent over time, and that's why Fair TV asked for the $25,000. And most of it will be for labor, and part of it will be for essentials of, busted camera, fixed brake repair, tapes, CDs, things like that.
Sure. So, so we should expect to see this line item every year as we continue with Fair TV.
Yes.
Will we see capital requests possibly for Fair TV in your capital budget going forward? Is that something?
If there were that kind of request for Fair TV, it'd be in there, but it'd be in their line items, and, they'd do like a sub-capital line item in my budget saying Fair TV capital and, whatever
Okay.
the big thing is.
No, I think it's
So,
well justified. My only other question is on fees and professional services for disaster recovery. We talk about this every year, and I know we've funded it and not funded it. And so this year, you're funding at what I would consider to be a minimum level of $3,000. Are we just not doing anything more, or are we done?
We are doing more, we're not done. That $3,000 is my money that I put aside for the Board of Ed side of it, which is the Munis system, because they keep going on, and last year it was $3,000. Was it $3,000? It was a big chunk for tapes. This year there is a...
Last year's budget was $13,000. That's why I'm kind of...
Right.
Not that I
yeah.
mind a decrease, I'm just curious, we talk about it so often.
Yeah, so, but I mean, it's always for that side of the fence of the Board of Ed, my DR line. My stuff that I do for DR that we're doing in Fairfield Woods basement is built into my regular budget, and this diskless backup system is part of that disaster
That's your
recovery
capital
system,
request.
because I don't like keeping them separate, because I've seen too many places say, hey, let's put a bunch of laptops in the closet, and we'll use them, and, you know, they forget about a year and a half, and if you know about Microsoft updates, you know, you forget a laptop for a year and a half, you'll be sitting there for 2 weeks just waiting for the updates to go on. My point being is, you put it in a closet, you forget about it, it's not going to work the way you want it to. So I work my backup and my disaster recovery into a cohesive system with a little bit of extra stuff for the DR, like the plan is to use the computers up in the library. We would take them over in a disaster and use them for whatever needs we need to. But it's that type of thing. I want to see equipment being used and working, and all our equipment is. Sure. So that's how.
That's Board of Ed, and then the 30,000 in your capital is kind of your part of DR.
Yes.
Plus whatever's in
Yes.
your working budget for
Yes,
you administrative.
yes,
Great. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Go to Mr. Bolito, then Mr. Brockfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Leslie. The tapeless backup system or diskless backup system, are you talking about the cloud?
Don't ever say cloud to me. I'm
Oh, it's
tired
a
of everybody
dirty word,
saying
okay.
cloud. Cloud is, it's like saying Kleenex, and what kind of Kleenex do you like? There's pink, white, yellow, blue, purple, orange. Cloud is just is a nice term that all the salespeople like to use. Cloud, we've been doing cloud, lots of places have been doing clouds for a long time. It was just called different things.
Okay.
And basically, you know, I mean, if you have a website, you're doing cloud. I mean, it's, you know, so this isn't cloud. So I've gotten off the track. What was the original question?
What is the diskless, yeah, I know not to call it the cloud, thank you for telling me that. Don't want you to bite my head off here. The diskless system, what are we talking about?
It's
to
basically,
flesh
I mean,
one.
you used to have a server, and you'd sit there and you'd back up the tapes and take the tapes off-site. And now, because you've got backup, business continuity, or no, backup, the disaster, business continuity, disaster recovery, you've got those three different things going on. This plays into that, and the backup is doing backups of our servers, but it also puts it into a situation where before it would have been, when I first got here and you said, hey, Don, things go bad in town hall and the police department, how long will it take you to get us back up? I would have said like 2 weeks to a month. Now we're starting to bring that timeline down, and the diskless backup system helps us do that, and it brings us down from like a day or two down to like a couple of hours.
Right.
And so.
So it's a
because
time
we can-
saver.
Yes, exactly, and it saves on tapes and stuff. We'll still do some tapes, because you don't want to keep your, you don't want to keep your, you got your server, you don't want your backups right next to your server, so our backup system's going to go up into the Woods Library.
So what is the storage media that you're using then? If it's not cloud and it's not tape, is it,
We're using tape right at the moment.
but what are we switching to? That's, I guess,
This
what I'm getting at.
diskless backup system, and so it's going to, instead of having daily tapes and weekly tapes, we're going to have all those on a disk.
Okay.
And then we'll take off either monthlies or quarterlies and annuals and ship them out if the whole town gets nuked. Someplace we'll have all our information and know what we're doing.
Okay, so it's technically not diskless, but I guess tapeless is a more
Well,
accurate
it's a
description.
stepping stone. It's in the middle
Right.
of it. You're
Gotcha.
putting it in between, and you're not using as many tapes.
Okay, fair enough. I want to go to the capital items. The first few requests are for specific equipment, PC and monitor replacement, printer replacement, laptop replacement, rugged laptop replacement, network equipment. Which departments are these earmarked for, and why do these items not appear in those individual department budgets? Or is this for some general use that is not department-specific?
When I first started, I came across with the 4-year plan, which has actually been sort of pushed because of money issues to a 5-year plan of replacing equipment.
Right.
And then we sit there and decide which pieces are really bad, or if a department needs a complete refresh, we'll go in and do a complete refresh on the department. The next department we're looking at is the finance department, and they're going to be getting new PCs in there, so this is where that's coming from.
Would it be possible for us to get a breakdown about what specifically you're buying? Because those are a couple of them are, not great, huge numbers, but, 52,000, 24,000. If you just get a sense of what exactly you're buying for that money, that would be appreciated. It doesn't have to be tonight. It could be in time for when we vote. You could do an email or offline or something.
Sure, so you just sort of like
Just a breakdown of what exactly you're getting for that money.
the PC model and the monitor and...
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
all. Thanks.
We'll go to Mr. Brockfeld and then Mr. Stone.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest to Mr. Bolito he never uses the term cloud again, by the way.
What if it's a nice day and I'm looking up at the sky?
Just come up with another word, that's all, yeah. Mr. Leslie, a quick question for you. Going back to your budget, at first, something that leapt out at me was the maintenance and repair line that went down 52%. But then I looked more carefully at it, and that 93,000 number in 12 is actually like a number that stands out. So the request you're making is actually more in line with fiscal years 11, 10, and 9, give or take. What happened in 12 that blew that number up almost twice the other years?
Let me look that one up.
What line are you talking about?
Line number 54,310, maintenance repair of equipment. It looks at first minus 53%, but the reality is that if you compare it to the 09, 10, 11, it's in line. But so I'm just wondering if we did some sort of big work or...
I'm a little confused.
If you go to 54,310, okay?
Right.
Maintenance repair of equipment, you'll see in 09 you had 55,000, then you had 51,000 the next year, then 33,000. Then you had a big jump up to 93,000 in 12, and then you're putting in 43.5. So at first I was wondering if we were skimping on maintenance, but that probably is not the case. It looks more like something happened in 12 that caused us to spend a lot more.
It's always been around that much.
I'm sorry?
We have a sheet that breaks that out. We have a sheet that breaks it out. I can put it as a handout for you to look at tomorrow, item by item.
Okay, but I mean, just,
What makes up the
just
93,000
generic, I'm just-
versus what makes up the 43,000? We have an itemized list for both years.
but is there any, not to spend tons of time, but is there something, I'm just wondering what would have made 11 to 12 almost triple and then come all the way back down? Is there big
Basically-
projects or lots of things broke, or?
It was moving stuff around in the budget is the answer, because a lot of the stuff got moved into fees and professional services. I had a real issue of the guy who, is it maintenance, or is it a service contract? Does it go into the maintenance and repair, or does it go into the fees and professional services because it's a service contract? So things got moved around. Most of it got put back into the fees and professional services.
Which, okay, I mean, which is good. I mean, although fees and professional services went down like 14%, so it doesn't seem possible that, I mean, it doesn't seem like, well, anyway. Am I the only one who's, yeah?
I'll have the answer.
Okay, I don't
Get
know.
into it more.
If you could, I appreciate it. Just, okay.
Then Mr. Walsh.
I just want to follow up
Follow
on,
up.
I want to have a follow-up to Mr. Brockfield's question. It raises the question about whether our maintenance repair numbers are actually going down. Have we gotten a lot of new computers requiring that there not be as much maintenance and repair on our equipment? Is our equipment getting older? There's got to be a reason why the number went down so drastically. We're talking about a 53% drop in that expense line item.
Yes, things have been doing better because I've been replenishing stock as far as computers and printers, and when I first got here, the first year or two, I got a bunch of printers because they were all dying. And the maintenance and repair to me is more a matter of I've got the money there if something breaks. I don't spend it if I don't need to spend it.
And where are we to date on that number for the 2012 one?
I have that.
It was,
It's, as of last week's report, that line is, the current line of 93,000 is either spent or encumbered at 65%, which is roughly two-thirds of a year. So it's on track to hit that 90-something number should that pace continue.
and if something breaks, it will.
To answer Mr. Walsh's question about year to
So if
date.
we're on track, because you've purchased all this new equipment, and we have less expense we should be having less expense, why aren't we tracking closer to the $43,000 number as opposed to the $93,000 number?
Good question. I'll have to figure that one out for you.
All right, if you can, I guess, try to get a response back to us on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stone, you've been patient here? Yeah. Let's go to Mr. Stone, please.
I don't know if I'm confused, but did you say some of the stuff like disaster recovery is part of the Board of Ed?
What is it?
Some, like your fees and professional fees for disaster recovery, is that strictly the town side, or is that some portion of the Board of
The
Ed?
$3,000 I hold in reserve for the Board of Ed side for the Munis system.
And what about Fair TV? That's the town, because, I mean, the Board of Ed also uses it.
Right, they're in discussions with Fair TV. I'm not.
No, I know.
Above Fair TV. They're trying to get money wherever they can, quite frankly, and
That wasn't what I was really looking for. I'm just wondering why that isn't in the Board of Ed budget and why it's in our budget.
I apologize, I didn't hear the whole question.
I'm just curious why some of this stuff is in this budget and not in the Board of Ed budget. If the Board of Ed is using it.
You've
I
got
mean,
to
I know
help.
it's all one town, I'm just
Yep,
saying.
you've got to help me out with, Don, on how much of these items would be attributed to the Board of Ed?
the only thing I have in my budget for the Board of Ed is the one line, fees and professional services, disaster recovery for $3,000.
Okay.
And I know Fair TV is going to ask the Board of Ed for some money at some time or another, because it's, they're two funding sources the way they look at it. So, if we do a good job, you'll hopefully support us more, or if they do a good job.
Mr. Brockfeld, did you have a follow-up?
No, I think Mr. Leslie partially answered it. I was just trying to follow up on what Bob was trying to say, which I think you were trying to ask was, are we funding out of the town side the entire Fair TV request, even though a good portion of Fair TV's work is done photographing or videoing Board of Ed meetings and Board of Ed related?
Actually, it's definitely balanced to the town side, because we do, what Fair TV is trying to do is the main meetings. So they do the Board of Finance, they do the Board of Selectmen, and they do the RTM meetings, which there are a lot of them, and then they do the Board of Ed meetings. And they'll do some other things too, but those four things are their bread and butter and what they feel is the most important things, and that's what they're looking for funding. And if they can, they'll do other things, like they did a PTA one, and the PTA paid for it, and that type of thing. So it's mostly the town work.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? I think Mr. Kyler, then we'll go to Mr. Walsh. Then Mrs. Leclerc, I'm sorry I missed you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leslie, I know we've had some discussions recently with some appropriations that came before us on disaster recovery in general. And I don't know where the town stands as far as an updated, formal, detailed disaster recovery plan that would enable the reader to understand it, know where everything is, know what the components are, what's being protected, how, when, and where, and all that stuff. So I don't know where that request is. I don't think I've seen it. And so I would like to formally request that in your presence. And in addition to that, if we could also add to that a layer of the budget for such plan, so that if we were to look at a budget book or even a document that was supported by the budget, we could see where the money for the disaster recovery plan is coming, because I'm hearing it's crossing a number of expense lines here, which is probably fine. However, when you look at disaster recovery, you can't say how much it's costing the town. You know, is it 20 grand or is it 220 grand, and what are the pieces? So if we could see the financial component or the budget that supports the plan, both today's plan and tomorrow's plan, I think that would be very helpful.
I would love to give that to you.
Thank you.
And I will try to do that, but I want you to realize that just one little thing is disaster recovery is not just the responsibility of IT. It takes a bunch of players to do it. And then from the IT point of view, I work my disaster recovery into the whole system. It's a holistic system. So, you know, the diskless backup system, am I supposed to cut that thing in half and say 15,000 for DR and 15,000 for backup
Yes.
system?
Yes.
If that's what
I
you
mean,
want.
I would look
I
at
can
it.
sort of do something like that.
Right.
I can say what will be needed for the disaster recovery,
Right.
but it's being used for other stuff too. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some estimation that is involved when you're carving something like that out for its purposes or its uses, but when you
Right.
look at the overall plan, if we could understand it financially and component-wise, and all the other pieces that are part of it, I think that would help us better understand the topic and the funding of it.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. We'll go to Mr. Walsh, and then we'll go to Mrs. Leclerc.
Mr. Leslie, in the salary regular payroll line, where it's 0.48%, I take it that's going to go up if some of these union contracts settle?
I think all my people are Theo, aren't they?
No, they're all flat from last year. Can't be.
Okay, so, I mean, but they're all in the union.
They're all in the mid-managers union, not in
Oh,
the
okay.
Theo union.
Oh, okay,
there's
so
no
that's still
contract
out?
settlement.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
it's still pending.
So the contract's not been pending, so this .48 is a little bit deceptive, because unless we get a zero for this coming year,
Right.
correct? Right?
I guess so.
You guess so, or is that the key? I presume the salary's going to
This
be
goes
going up.
back to the discussion
I guess I'll ask the fiscal officer. Is that the case, Mr.?
Well, I
Mr.
think
Hill?
that clearly, and if I can step in just to kind of help, the way all the departments are constructed, any of the salary or salary-related lines are really handed down from the finance department to the department heads. The only items included in raises or increases are, if they were in the Theo union, that was solved in time to put that in here. Or there were steps, or longevity bonuses, that type of thing that are in there. Beyond that, they're all kept in the contingency account this year.
Okay.
Jim,
So
Yes.
that-
the department head received the 2% increase. That's what's reflecting in the overall personnel regular payroll line as the 0.48% increase, because no one else has received an increase. So his raise
Is in
over
there.
the whole
Is in there.
group as the denominator gives you the 0.48%.
Okay. On line 53,200, the fees and professional services, can you explain why this line is going down to 13.8? Are you having it go down to try to cover like the Fair TV and some of the other costs, trying to drive that number down? Or is there a reason why you're going down 13.8% in that line item?
It was simply adding up all the stuff that I have, comes out, you know, I start, basically keep track of all my POs. When it's time to do the budget, I add up all the POs for fees and professional services, and as example, we're not going to be paying $20,000 to admins, but we will be paying something new for QDS. Oh, sorry, we'll be paying, you know, we're dropping one tax system and picking up the other system, and so things keep changing and they're dynamic.
So it's a lot cheaper, that new system?
It's cheaper, yes.
A lot cheaper? Is that part of the driver of the 13.8% decrease?
I actually left that number for the current system in there until the new system comes in and they show us what we're going to be charging for it.
So there's actually no discount for what you just talked about, since you're using...
No, but I
the same
just
number.
use that as an example of
Okay.
things are changing. I mean, I've added stuff too. I mean, one of the groups had an extra piece of software I didn't even know about that I added to the fees and professional services, and then we've got an issue in the sense that we need to decide in the town who's paying for what? Is IT paying for software that's in the departments, because I'm doing that for about 4 or 5 departments, but then yet there are other departments that are still paying for their own software, like Parks and Rec is paying for their own software. So I don't mind which way it goes, whether it's in their department budget or my department budget, but obviously it's got to be one spot, and it should be, over time organized, and that's what I've been trying to do over the last number of years, is, as I find them, I collect them.
Mr. Tetreau?
The simplest answer to Mr. Walsh's question, I think, Mr. Leslie, you pointed out that you had added everything up to get to that number.
Yes.
Would it be possible to get that list out to the board so they can see what makes up that number, which might help?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out that $32,000 difference. Are there less POs? Have we terminated some of our service providers? Or have some of the same service providers gone down in cost for this coming year?
Yeah. And perhaps if Mr. Leslie can do that for the last 2 years, you can see the comparison, see what's included and what isn't. Don, you said you had that detail, so that would be easy enough to get out?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a follow-up on this? Quickly, please.
As a follow-up, you had mentioned that you had moved some things over to fees and professional services, and if you could designate on that list which ones had been moved over and changed into that earlier when Mr. Brackfeld was questioning.
Sure.
Thanks.
Go to Mrs. Leclerc.
I wanted to go back to Fair TV. The $20,000 that we're going to be paying, and I don't know if it's a question for you or who it is it going to be used exclusively for Fairfield's TV?
Yes.
Okay. And then are other towns contributing also towards Fair TV for their broadcasting, or is it just?
Well, Fair
Fair
TV
TV
are, but for their own private TV stations, yes, they are. And some towns actually have hired managers and stuff. Like, if you take a look at the Orange system, they did a very nice job, and they've hired a full-time station manager.
Okay.
Can
I
I
don't
ask
think
one more
Mrs.
question?
Absolutely.
And then communications, can we talk a little bit about why that's going up?
It was, we had we had a contract with ChimeNet for 5 years. It ended up at the end of last year, and there was an automatic, there was a renewal clause in it, and so we renegotiated, and by the time all the stuff was done, my budget was already made for the year, and it was too low, and I had to add $15,000, which is the actual cost of what we're paying now for the next 5 years.
Okay.
All set, Mrs. Leclerc?
Yeah.
We'll go to Mr. Walsh and then to Mr. DeWitt.
In regard to the disaster recovery, where are our servers currently located? What locations are they at?
For disaster
Yes.
recovery? It's part of the library cluster, and it's in the basement of the Fairfield Woods Library. It's part of the library cluster, and it's in the basement of the Fairfield Woods Library.
Okay, and do we have anything up at the Burr Elementary School? Any town servers or any disaster recovery
No,
up
that's
stuff up there?
Well, that's the Munis system, so the town has a stake in that, but that's all handled by the Board of Ed.
What's the town's stake in it?
It's because our databases, our Munis, all these reports
Financial.
come out of the Munis.
And do we have, or is there backup, is there generators up there?
Yes.
There are.
Or, well, they had a problem, and they're either putting them in or repairing them at this point in time,
Can I,
I think, because they tried to do a test, and it didn't work, and they found out that the wiring wasn't done right or something like that.
can I suggest that we, because I think the topic of disaster recovery
Is a huge
is a
topic.
huge topic, and I think that it would be quite beneficial for all of us to have maybe an update at our quarterly review meeting on where, what the original plan was, where we stand in the original plan, and maybe what the process is going forward. Would that satisfy everyone?
If I could just follow up
Prepare for it?
on that, as Mr. Leslie points out, there is a generator at Burr School where the Munis system, where the backup for our financial and human resource system is located. The problem with it was the generator was not hooked up to that room, and so the Board of Education is in the process of switching the wires there.
I think that's something we can talk about in April, but that doesn't sound like a good thing. But, Mr. Tetreau, did you?
I just wanted to confirm, would late April be an okay time to do that? I think it's April 20-something
Yeah.
is the quarterly review.
24th, Linda?
Don, is that okay with you?
Sure.
Can we do that then? Just want to keep us moving along, Mr. Walsh.
Under special department supplies, it goes up 74.42%. What is the reasoning for that increase this coming year? Is there something specific in there that's creating that $32,000 increase?
It's the what? Right. That's the software for patching the PCs. That's the software for patching the PCs is the thing that pushed that up. That was $15,000.
Patching the PCs, that was what you explained earlier about being able to access them from outside? Or
No,
explain
this
what that
was
is.
the, when you're at home,
Yeah?
comes in and says, hey, there's a new update to Adobe software.
Okay.
This software is going to take care of that for the town because we're locking the systems down. Because every time we turn around, someone has got a new toolbar on their system or something else, and not by any fault of their own, it's just the way these people are making their software that it jumps on there. So we're trying to, basically, we're trying to make the computer at this point in time similar to a phone in the sense you go up to the phone, you know what it does, you use it, it does the job, and no one installs software on the phone or anything else like that. We're trying to make the computers a nice utility that does the job that it's supposed to do for the user that's there and not have it get overloaded with bloated software and whatever and slow it down and have them call the help desk and us have to take time to clean it up or get rid of the virus or whatever.
And that's a one-time fee, that $30,000?
The $15,000 for the software is thing, and there'll be a maintenance fee afterwards, but it's, it'll be $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that.
So it's $15,000 for that?
Yes.
What's the other $15,000 for with the increase in the budget?
General software, because I still need to buy Microsoft licenses, Microsoft Office licenses for the new machines, and we need to get Adobe Acrobat licenses, and so it's just general software for the machines.
Okay, is there a lot more PCs? Is that why that number is going up from the previous year? Because the previous year, your special department supplies are 43. You've explained another 15,000. It leaves another 15,000. So is this above and beyond the normal amount of Office licenses and Adobe licenses you'd buy on a yearly basis?
No, it's because we haven't been buying them. We've been using the software that we've had, the old 2003 software. Now we're moving up into the new 2010 software, so we need to get the newer versions of the software that run on the new operating system. And what happened last year was the budget got cut because we didn't feel that there was enough, and the powers that be didn't feel there was enough money to buy all the software that we needed to. So I've been trying to get back to and stay up to date.
Okay, I guess that raises the question. I think the RTM cut some of the money that you wanted to purchase the Windows 7 software packages. Is that correct? Is that my memory correct?
And that's what we're talking about. This whole thing here is the Microsoft Office Windows 7 packages.
So this is to make up for the amount that was not funded last year?
Not to make up, but just to put a little bit back so I can keep moving forward.
Okay, because last year, didn't you make that a capital request, all that stuff? I thought it was in the capital area.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. It's in the operating. Okay. In the capital request area, can you just take us through when you say PC monitor request, can you take us, and the printer request, are these normal amounts? Is this some type of program the town has to buy a certain number of PCs every year? Or is this above normal or under the amount we normally order?
When I first came on and I explained it, I tried to do a 4-year cycle on PCs,
Yeah.
a 5-year cycle on monitors, and about a 6-year cycle on printers. And it's always been cut to a certain degree. Now we're sort of about a year later on everything, which is working. So
Mr. Walsh, Mr. Bolito has already asked for a listing of all the equipment that he's going to be buying.
I'm just trying to get a general overhaul, and as opposed to, I appreciate the list, and that'll be great, but I'm just trying to ask you, just in general, is this a normal amount that you've been ordering, or is it a little less, or is it a little more?
it's a touch less.
A touch less.
I mean, like, we've gone from 4 to 5 years on PCs, basically. So it's a little bit less.
Thank you.
What else? quick one for myself, or a quick kind of summary or overview from me. Look at page 159.
159.
So that's the budget request, and I like the new format that goes back a number of years. So look at fiscal year '09 as compared to the subsequent years. In fiscal year '09, now you have to back out communications, okay, because obviously I think we started charging something to the communications line item in here that was probably carried elsewhere. I would assume that might be telephone or thing of the sort. So if you back that out, you'll see that in fiscal year 2009, we spent about $700,000. In fiscal year 2010, the apples-to-apples number jumped on a pro forma basis to $1 million, and then it's held steady at between $1.1 million and $1.2 million each of the successive years. Okay? So we had an increase of about 43% between '09 and '10, and then jumps around a little bit, but some years as high as maybe a 10% increase from that period. My question is very simply this, because I have no desire to manage the IT function for the town. I don't have a benchmark to compare this to in terms of what other towns are spending in IT and how efficient we're being with our IT spending in comparison to other organizations. On the face of it, you look, this is only for the town side. This does not carry the Board of Education, with the exception of that $3,000, which means that we're spending about 1.47, okay, million per year for 464 employees. Now, 464 employees, not all of them are using computers in this instance. But because that's the best number we have, that comes to about $3,174, say $3,100 per employee per year for IT. Now, that could be a good number. It could be a bad number. I can't sit here and say whether it's an efficient number and whether we're getting what we're paying for on the IT side right now in terms of efficiency. So what I'd like to see is some benchmarking as to, are we getting what we're paying for here? Are we paying consistent with what other towns are paying to support their IT function? Are we getting similar services? Are we getting similar uptime, right? Do we have similar functionality? Are we sticking to the plan in terms of the 4 or 5 year plan on investing in our IT? Because it's obvious that through the course of the last few years, we've invested in this area. We've ramped up our investment. Now, Mr. Leslie, to your point, you've wanted more, and because of the economic times, we've cut back more.
Right.
I just don't, we can go through all the line items we want. I just don't know whether we're being efficient right now. And that's not a
Quite
criticism.
frankly, I would be hard-pressed to say whether we are or not. We're doing what other towns are doing as far as virtualizing. I mean, some other towns are even going farther, and they're virtualizing their desktops, which I don't see the need to at this point in time. But we're making virtual clusters. We've decreased our backup time for recovery, and that plays into the virtual clusters that we have now. A lot of that equipment was rather old at the time, so we've had to refresh a lot of equipment, which played into the virtual system, quite frankly. It made it very well for us because these servers were all old and wearing out. We could bring in new. So the $3,000 you're talking about is not per employee. It includes the town systems, the servers and stuff.
That's just the math.
Yeah.
The math is you've got a IT infrastructure all in, that's $3,100 an employee.
Right. And I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying is when you said, $3,100 per employee, to me it said, hey, I'm plopping down $3,100 worth of stuff on the guy's desk, and that's not the case. It's all the back end stuff.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's our overhead costs.
Yeah.
Per employee to support them from an IT function, and it's just the math.
Right. And then the only other thing I'd like to make
Yeah.
sort of clear is that some towns have fragmented IT, sort of like we have to a certain degree with the police and the fire. Some towns don't even touch police and fire. Some towns don't touch the library. They have their own IT staff that's not included. So it's going to be a hard comparison to make and come up with good numbers, but, you know,
I think it's, for me, it's important, and for me, I'd like to know what's the plan, and should we be looking at something else? Or or are we going in the right direction? That's all.
Sure.
And Mr. Hill?
I think it is a reasonable request, and I think the one thing, though, that Mr. Leslie points out, the great difficulty is going to be in comparing the towns as to what they have, particularly in some of the areas that Mr. Leslie talks about, public safety, the library, what interaction is there with the Board of Education, what integration is there, and things like that. Even another piece, you know, we have a Water Pollution Control Authority, which is a piece of this also, and things of that nature which have to be done. But I think it's doable to get some level of measurement, and with the caveat, though, that there can be some twists and turns on this thing as to comparing apples to apples.
I completely understand that, and Mr. DeWitt, I will definitely jump right to you. I completely understand that, but I think it's important so that we know that we're spending the dollars wisely. This, in many organizations, just becomes a black hole where you keep on throwing money at. And I just want to be very careful about that. I'd also like to make sure we include, not just in IT, but what the other departments are doing, and what our total spend is in this area. And Mr. DeWitt, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I just wanted to support that effort. I believe fiscal 9 to fiscal 10 is coincident with us hiring Mr. Leslie and having
Yep,
a very
right.
lengthy discussion with a lot of people in this room. And I think it's a really good idea to do it this year because we're 4 years into it now. 4 years,
Okay.
you've had some time to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in '09, very specifically, fire department was buying their own printers, and this was fragmented. So I agree with you that it looks like a severe, you know, like a doubling of the budget. We could find 3 times the budget in everyone else's.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think I would really support that because
Right.
you could probably show some real improvement here. And we just met, you know, the engineering department was here the other night, and they said, oh, we got a piece of software, and we're going to load it. And I literally said to him, well, why isn't Mr. Leslie's group doing it? Oh, it's very special. I mean, it's software, you know. I don't know why everything our company, everything goes through the software group, they load it up, comes back to the user.
Right.
Then when it
Yes.
breaks, they come right back in. and
Well,
fix
it's
it.
right. Well, absolutely right,
That's what
right?
we're there for. And
Well,
I
if they
mean,
do it wrong, they're going to come to you and say, hey, I did something wrong, right?
And quite frankly, if we install it, we know what we installed and we know how it was installed
Well, you
versus
can keep
going up
control
and
of
finding.
licenses.
Yes.
That's what I didn't understand, how you keep
There-
control of licenses. If
There's
you're
so
in it.
many people that think they know IT in the world.
Yeah. So I'm behind that. That's, and it's the right time. It's 4 years into it. We should be trending some kind of line at this point.
Okay.
Does anybody else from the boards have a question or comment? Seeing none, can we go back to the public, or go to the public on this budget? Mr. Gallagher? Yes. You need to come up to the microphone and state your name, please. And your address? Thanks.
My name is Jim Gallagher. I live on Congress Street in Fairfield. Following that very insightful commentary about looking a little bit deeper into the IT, my comments are kind of insignificant. Fair TV is a very important service to the town of Fairfield. I'm very fond of it, and most of us that live in the town of Fairfield that live a relatively recluse lifestyle, we kind of depend on it. I heard during the commentary before that the Board of Education may be asked to support Fair TV also. Just for maybe future planning, I think it would be in the best interest of the town of Fairfield and its citizens if, since that money is all coming from the same pot, if the money for the Board of Education and for the town comes from the town side, so it doesn't become a discretionary line item in the Board of Education budget. So I hope you give that some thought.
Thank you, Mr. All right, any other questions, comments from the public, or rather, comments from the public? Seeing none, any back to the board? Yep.
Just the operational audit that we paid money for pretty much says what we've been saying up here. Centralizing IT, that kind of, that's, you know, so.
I've been trying.
Still look back to that document we paid for and maybe start paying a little, attention to it,
Okay.
especially in IT department.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll go to the next department, which is the Board of Finance.
I'll stay here.
Mr. Leslie, I want to thank you for coming in tonight,
No problem.
and have a good evening. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully at our quarterly meeting. Mr. Hillard, one line item that went up, our fees and professional services?
This is well, we have a quote. We are entering, as this board may recall, and this is a line which is clearly totally under the auspices of this board. We have a quote from our outside auditor, which is from 3 years ago when we did an RFP for audit services. In the past 2 years, we have paid slightly less for that fee than that quote is. We estimate roughly about a 5% increase, $5,000 actually, in that fee, which would still be under the price that they quoted, but I think we can negotiate that if it's the desire of this board to remain with the same firm for at least one more year.
Okay. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
clearly a
Hillard.
call of this board and of the audit committee if there were to be any change. But if there were to be a change, we'd have to get moving on it very quickly.
Yep. We'll turn that over to the audit committee. We'll ask Mrs. Leclerc and her committee to take a look at the audit relationship like we do every year. Any other questions, comments from board members? Seeing none, we'll go to the public on this item. Seeing none, we'll come back to the board, and we'll go on to item number 3150, which is unemployment compensation, and we have discussed this previously, so just remind the board of those discussions. Any questions or comments on this? Mr. Hiller, what's our run rate, just so we know? Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Brown.
We currently have spent, and I was hoping that we would have received the February billing, which is really for the January payments to date. We have spent $235,000, basically $236,000 year-to-date. Our run rate, there is some seasonality, particularly on the town side. In the case of the Board of Ed, we saw significant increases and then a drop. For example, the last 3 months were, for the Board of Education, 25,963, 24,588, and then in February, and this would basically for payments made in December, 19,273. So we did see roughly a 20% drop in the month of February. I had hoped to have
So what's our total run rate now?
236. Oh, if we were to, we're still estimating close to 400,000 for the year, but I would have hoped that we would have seen February payments. Normally, we would have by this time of the month. We have not seen it from the State Department of Labor.
So you're estimating, if you're estimating we're going to come in at 400,000 this year,
Yes.
you're estimating flat for next year.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, you had a question?
Question, is that a list per department? Is that allocated per department?
No, it is not. It's
Can we-
not, it's not allocated per department. It does also include the Board of Education, which is the primary expense this year. Probably in the neighborhood of 70% of the expenses right now, we estimate, would be towards the Board of Education. Mr. Lombardo did do, and I think it was distributed to this board, we did break out the costs that are attributable to the golf courses in an analysis that he handed out here 2 weeks ago, or that was distributed to the board. As far as that, that's the other primary driver in that, but there is no.
Because we pay unemployment to part-time people, correct?
We do in certain cases, yes.
I still can't figure that out. I mean, why do we pay, unemployment
It's-
to part-time people?
It's called the law. We have contracted, I should make the board aware, we have contracted with a new service, Unemployment Tax Management Corporation out of Massachusetts, who has just begun to monitor our claims and to assist us in appeals with the State Department of Labor. They have been utilized by many other towns in Connecticut, Hamden, Darien, Norwich, the list goes on. And hopefully they can give us some assistance as far as this, and they have been responsive to this. And also some suggestions, particularly in the part-time areas, as to employment contracts that may be, for example, we pay unemployment compensation to school crossing guards, for example, during summer vacations, during holiday vacations, and things of that nature. We know the schools are only going to operate 180 days a year. We know we're only going to need a school crossing guard 180 days a year, and yet we're getting tagged with unemployment compensation during those periods, those off periods.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bolito, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What determines whether, under the state unemployment compensation laws, who is a independent contractor and you would not need to pay for versus a municipal part-time employee who you would have to pay for? How does that line get drawn?
I'm not certain. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
You have someone who's working at the golf course. It's a seasonal type job, right?
Correct.
So when they're out of season, you would then need to pay unemployment compensation to the
Yes.
state on a dollar-for-dollar basis. If you hired an independent contractor, someone who's, it could be anybody, not a municipal employee, has the town investigated where that could be done? I'm just trying to get at.
We haven't specifically investigated that. I've had discussions with both Human Resources Departments at both the Board of Education and the town as to what we're doing and what we could do to change this. Obviously, this has been a line that has escalated probably more than any other line in the town. And I think what we've got to do is investigate what our options are on all of these people, particularly in the part-time or seasonal employment, where we know we're going to be laying people off.
Right. Do we pay benefits to part-time people? I mean, is that what gets them into that realm of being municipal
We do not pay
employees?
benefits other than, actually, in most cases, we are no longer paying Social Security to these people either.
There's, in private industry, and I would assume that municipalities have to follow it, there's over 20 different points that you need to look at to determine whether a person is an employee or an independent contractor. Right. And you need to go down each position and review each of those points to determine it. One of the possibilities, and I'm sure this is being investigated, is if you could hire an outside service and really not hire the person, but hire, Joe's crossing guards, and then everything is Joe's responsibility. And you pay Joe, and he has to handle all that. Now, obviously, that'd be built into his contractual price.
Right.
But it's something that perhaps worth exploring.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was getting at. The other question I had was, in the service description on line 164, it points out, should the town go to the percentage of payroll basis for paying unemployment compensation, our costs would be significantly higher. We pay the state on a dollar-for-dollar basis. But when I see that sentence, it makes me think that we have a choice. Is that just an illustrative sentence, or is that something where the town
We
can
do have a
choose?
choice, actually.
Okay.
And all municipalities, and all municipalities have that choice.
Okay.
All municipalities in Connecticut, to the best of my knowledge, opt to pay dollar-for-dollar reimbursement for the cost paid as far as benefits are concerned. The problem is that since we have, particularly in the full-time employment, very little turnover, we'd be paying a percentage of payroll for everyone.
Okay.
All full-time employees, and there's very minimal turnover in the full-time ranks up to the statutory
Okay, got it.
maximum.
Thanks.
Sure. Mr. Brown, and then to Mr. Kiley. Is that a follow-up, Mr. Brown?
Well, just a request, if we can get a breakdown per department for the unemployment, can we do that?
We have a breakdown for the Board of Education.
Right. But I'm talking
And
about for the
also
town,
what
too.
bargaining units, if there were bargaining units that were involved, as far as that's concerned, on the most recent ones. We also, as I indicated before, have the costs attributable to the golf courses specific. There are, as I say, we haven't received the major bills yet. I do have a bill sitting on my desk for some extended benefits for town employees. In both cases, they were employees that were terminated.
So you can provide it by department?
Yeah, we can. We can. Take a little effort, but we can
Thank
break
you.
it out.
Mr. Kyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bolito did ask my first question, which was, do we have a choice in how to pay unemployment? Which leads me to my second question. The statement that we would definitely pay more if we went to a percentage of payroll, I don't know that that's true or not true. I'd like to see an analysis done, because that rate that you pay, while it is on your total payroll, granted, it's also based on your claims. And as your claims are down, your percentage is down. It might come out close, it might come out higher, it might come out lower. I don't know the answer, but I would like to see at least a pro forma analysis that would show, under the minimum rate that we would have to use against our total payroll that is supported by our claims, what would the charge have been?
We did that
There is a
calculation
calculation you
several
can do,
years ago,
yeah.
5 or 6 years ago, and we were talking at that time. Now, I don't know, we obviously have seen a budget which has tripled here. At that time, without that experience, what we would have been paying were multiples of what we had been paying. I can't say specifically, but we can look at that again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, from board members? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Any questions or comments from the public? None, and we're done with unemployment compensation. I'm going to ask for a brief recess for about 2 minutes. We've been at it for an hour and a half now. We'll come back. We'll be on page 235, which is the library, and we'll start with that right after a brief break. Thank you. A little bit. As Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey said, feel free to help yourselves. But we're going to call the boards back into session to start with the library budget. And we're on page 235. Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Good, and yourself?
Good.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Go right ahead. Why don't I'll turn the floor right over to you.
Well, I just gave you some documents you might want to peruse at your leisure, but really what I wanted to say was the library story is a good news story. This last year, we did our statistical analysis, and we're the second busiest library in the state of Connecticut. We also happen to have the busiest branch library in the state of Connecticut also. So our traffic is increasing considerably. Our activity is very active. We have 2,200 people coming through our buildings every day. We had 37,000 people attend our programs, and we had 1,010,000 items board last year, and that is a record for us in Fairfield, and is looking like it's becoming close to a record in the state. So we're very proud of what we're doing, and we're being recognized. We did get the Public Service Award out of Connecticut for the Job Series program, and I have something on the back of that paper, the good news story. We did a survey recently of those people who've attended the Job Series program. It's been going for 3 years, and we thought, well, we'd just pretty up their resumes and make them a little bit more employable. But those who actually responded to the surveys told us 30% of them had got jobs. So we really have a wonderful output measure, and we're very proud of that, and we'll continue with the Job Series. Last year, we started our Seed to Seed Library, which is the first in the Northeast, thanks to our Deputy Town Librarian, Nancy, who's here tonight. And just recently, we had news that we got a FINRA grant, which is a big honor. There are only 16 libraries this year who were awarded that. And the idea is we're going to bring a program series focusing on financial literacy to Fairfield. So we're going to help people in a financial crunch. You may know about that, and really help them go from basic budgeting to developing portfolios to couponing, and we're going to run that for about a year. So we're honored to get that too. So I think the good news story is getting out beyond our own town. So we're very happy about that.
Congratulations, that's great. Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey?
Just a point of information, I wondered if our speakers could introduce themselves for the viewing
Oh,
public.
I should introduce the fellow to my left. I'm Karen Ronald, the town librarian. Sorry, this is Jim Swift, our technology librarian.
Jim, nice to meet you.
Sorry
Thank you
about
for coming. All right. Are there any other questions? Are there questions? Mr. Brockfeld?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Big fan of the library, use it.
Thank you.
And my family does as well. Just one interesting question for me. Second busiest library system in Connecticut, is that per capita, or is that just absolute? I mean,
No,
Stamford
it's
has
there are
10
different
times the
measurements.
population.
Well, we're busier than Stamford, and they have a population of 119,000. It's based on circ, so it's how many items are actually
Based on-
bored.
I'm sorry, what?
Circulation. How many items are bored by the population over a year span?
Gross numbers or relative to the population?
Gross numbers.
Interesting, okay. Thank you.
Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I have to thank Ms. Ronald in open forum, because when I was working on the purchasing procedures a couple months ago, I spent some time, and we were talking with the Board of Ed and with the library to make sure that the specifications, the purchasing policies were going to be in line and help everyone out. And I got a real education about the library, and it's amazing. It's like a little town down there in the basement with all those ladies. And it's quite an amazing place, and everybody needs to walk through there. We talk about walking through the police department and the fire department. Man, I tell you, walk through the library. There's a lot going on there. And I
I'll
really,
always give anyone a tour.
Yes, they didn't want to let me go. They were feeding me, and it was great. Yeah, my food is not in the budget.
It's a large increase.
Yeah. Couple quick questions, because we're going to talk about Pequot Library later.
Okay.
And when I was reviewing that budget, and I know you have a collaborative,
Yes.
agreement with Pequot Library, I was surprised to see, and I wonder if you agree with that, the materials requested at the Pequot Library for the Maine and the Woods has gone down, but they state that the materials requested at the Maine and Woods for Pequot materials have gone up 44%. I guess I don't understand that. And do you agree with those numbers?
Well, I haven't seen those reports. We do share resources in the town. We do have a delivery service the main library pays for that we all share. So you can order, you can say you want a book, we find it on the shelf and we deliver it to Woods or Pequot. We do share a computer catalog so that when you actually, with Pequot, the museum and the two libraries that actually our friend here helps manage. But I can't speak to those exact stats. I think that what we do is we are the main library, we are the research library, we have a deeper collection when it comes to serious subjects. The Woods Library tends to be a popular library, and then I believe the Pequot supplements our collection. So those items that we don't necessarily have in our collection, but the Pequot librarians feel as worthy, they would buy them as a supplemental resource.
And just back to that collaborative agreement you have, right?
Right.
So there's, I think there's a revenue line here for fees, not fees, but penalties, late books and stuff like that.
Right.
Which, I mean, you're charged with under your administration. Does that agreement or collaborative happen at the Pequot Library as well? I know it does at the Woods, right?
Yes, it does. I'm sure they have a same system. We don't see that money. Our money, all our fines, our rentals, all the revenues goes to the town. I don't know what happens at Pequot, but they do have a fine system too.
Okay, so you don't, so even if they take the Maine's books and someone's late at the Pequot Library with that, there's no fee, comes back to the town?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question, and you have the executive director sitting behind me, so you could ask him when he comes up. Dan Snydecker's here, or he was.
Okay.
I don't know how that works. That's
Okay.
their
No, I don't mean to
relationship.
grill you on the Pequot
Yeah,
Library,
no.
it just kind of came up. And there was something else, and I'm at a loss right now, but I think that's it for me. I mean, I don't know if you want to spend any time on any of this data
Ye-
for the public
Right.
that you've given us.
My big concern, I think we're doing a great job. I will say that I wish 10 years ago, I wasn't here 10 years ago, so I'll dream. I really wish as a standard when it comes to, they call it here special materials, whatever they call it, they call it library materials now. It used to be called special departmental supplies, that we had actually had a standard put in the budget that we need 5% increase in this line item every year. We do an awful lot of research. We know that this year periodicals are going up 7%. Well, I'm talking about next fiscal year. Databases at least 5%. Audios are going up 4%, and it's a cumulative effect of about 5%. So we've asked as much as we could, which is 4.35, but it's still going to have an effect on our purchasing power next year, and I just want people to know that. We manage our money very frugally and very smartly, I have to say, and we're always watching it. But I have to say, if we're not at 5%, we can't promise the community that you're going to get the same level of resources you had this year. So that's a big concern of mine as a professional doing it for a number of years. My other concern, I do mention it, it's not a line item, I'd like to speak to it, and that's really why my friend's here. Jim, we've had a fairly flat staffing for a long time. We've had one additional staff member for the last 10 years. And if you look at some of our stats, which I could go into now, but maybe you would like me to do it later, we really need to think about staffing our library more fully. And my biggest concern right now is when I see two buildings, one's open 69 hours a week, one's open 65 hours a week, and I have systems going, networks, 170 plus PCs, and I have one fellow to my left who's doing a great job, who's only really available to us 35 hours a week. I'm very concerned when we have public computers and computer labs and all sorts of things that we're going to end up in a crisis situation, and I'd rather not have that happen. I would rather come to you and figure out how we could get at least one more full-time person at the library on site responding to public demand mostly, but also to make sure we don't end up in a disaster situation. So that's at the end of my budget narrative, and Jim can speak a lot to that, and I've actually given you documents associated with the good news document about why we really think it's critical to consider this.
But just to be clear, that's not within the budget
No, it
numbers
is not.
before us.
But we are told by Mr. Tetreau I could at least bring it up and place it on the table. So I'll put it on his shoulders. But the idea was, it was a concern we had a discussion about, so I thought I would bring it up.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, Karen's absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that we laid out right from the start for the department heads is that the difficulty and the challenges presented by this budget, especially with the drivers being the magnitude and size they were, and asked each of the departments to come in with as close to a flat budget as they could. On the other hand, as Karen also pointed out, that if there's something they wanted to address, and specifically address before the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, I encourage them to bring it up within that. So.
Okay.
Can I just,
Yeah, well, go stay with Mr. DeWitt, then we'll come right back to Mr. Walsh.
I just want to okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just one last thing. Have you seen any improvement with the new purchasing policies? Has it impacted you yet? I mean, it's still pretty new, right?
We love it. It's beautiful. No, no, we do, because it makes our lives easier. I mean, that's what librarians do. We are buyer specialists for library materials. We're doing it all the time. We check prices all the time. We're making sure we're getting a good deal. We're managing collections constantly. That's still our core business. So for us to have had the thresholds go up on the quotes and And the bidding, it's been much easier, much more efficient. We're not chasing all sorts of numbers when we already knew what the numbers were, because that's what we spend a lot of our time doing. So we very much appreciate it, and I like the documentation that says there are sole source things out there that we know are sole source because we're constantly looking at this stuff. So yeah,
Great.
it's been really helpful.
Great, thank you very much.
We go to Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I just have a question, I guess, as to the first selectman. This is in regards to the position that you mentioned that he encouraged you to bring forward. But you, Mike, you didn't think it was important enough to put it into your first selectman budget, correct? I just want to be clear about that, for you to recommend it.
Correct. Basically, the challenge this year, and what I went out to the department heads with, is to maintain the run rate that we're at, so that the library's done a phenomenal job. And you look at the rave reviews, not only in times of normalcy, but certainly during the storm, where they stayed open and we allowed our citizens to go in there. They did a phenomenal job with the staff and resources they have. So that, but we have staffing issues, as you've heard, at police, at fire, at DPW. Can step through pretty much each department, building, zoning, and at some point we'll need to go back and address those. But given the run rates we're at and given what the drivers were doing to this year's tax increase, I didn't feel it was prudent this year to go back and start to address those staffing issues at this time. So I asked the department heads, if we've been able to survive the past year, let's do it one more year.
Good. Mr. Walsh? Set?
Yeah, I have another question on another area, but if you want to go to somebody else, that's fine.
You can, please.
In regards to the digital library, you gave a description of last year having invested $60,000 into the digital library. And has that been being used?
Yeah, 70% of our digital materials are out at any one time.
And how much new materials are in this budget?
And this budget will be twice as much because we want to invest about $120,000 in our digital library next year.
So that 120,000 is in this year's budget?
In the one we're talking about, yes.
Yes. And what line item is that on?
That's going to be in library materials. That's all part of, we can buy physical materials, we can buy digital materials. So it's under 56180.
Okay. And I guess that's my question. So that line item's only gone up 4.35%. You've doubled your digital materials. So is this something you see going on in the foreseeable future, that we're going to be getting more digital materials and cutting back on the amount of volumes of books we buy?
Yeah, especially in reference. Come and look at our reference collection now. We are managing it. It's much smaller because a lot of this reference material is ending up in information databases. So instead of having it on the shelves, it's now electronic. So yes, we're going that right. But for a while, you'll have a transition period where you're going to have bestsellers in audio format, you're going to have them on e-audio, you're going to have them on digital books, and you're going to have them on the physical books, because we're not a homogeneous population. We have different needs for different segments of the population. Maybe in 20 years, we'll be going far more digital, but we have to sort of basically bridge those gaps right now.
All right. In regards to the digital books, what formats do you have to buy multiple formats, or are they?
Yeah, it's just like buying a physical book. Sadly, they won't give us simultaneous use. That's what libraries would have loved to have done, but I don't think the publishers would have really approved of that. In fact, we're fighting with them now about that. So it's just like buying a digital, just like a physical item. It's a digital item. So yeah, so if we have a bestseller, we'll have to buy 5 or 10 or whatever we need to do.
All right. But when you buy that form, what format is that in? Can somebody who has a Kindle use the same one as somebody
Yes.
who has got another different device?
Yes. We bought a database service called Overdrive, and it's basically the industry standard right now. There are other ones coming up. So yes, if it doesn't matter about your device.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the library for being here. Actually, as a follow-up to Selectman Walsh's question, and perhaps as a follow-up to your questions about staffing, if there are problems with those digital downloads or issues like that, who is it at the library who is dealing with?
On the education end, anyone at a public service desk should be well-trained enough to help someone upload it to their device. And we're finding we're getting a lot of traffic for that, number one. Number two, it would be Jim.
Okay. Could you just help me understand the different staff you have who are working in technology-related areas, and I know that you have, and just let me see if I have this correct. On page 239, the web librarian, which
Yes.
we share.
Mary Ock does 3 jobs. She has a reference librarian, she's a town webmaster, and the library webmaster. So her job is split sort of 10, 10, and 10, or 12, 12, 12, whatever you like.
Okay.
So she's doing 3 jobs right now.
Okay, and then in terms of technology-related issues, the only other person is
Is
Mr.
Jim.
Okay,
And he's 35 hours a week.
okay. I have other, but I'll,
Feel free.
unrelated.
No, go ahead, and then we'll go to
Okay,
Mr. Brown.
thank you. 2 of the lines, 53,310, rental and storage, and 54,310, maintenance, repair of equipment, are both going down by a significant percentage. I'm just wondering how we're
Like
doing
that?
this.
We're getting rid of some of our photocopiers. We've decided that people are moving to scanning. We have a scanning machine. We know this is happening. Why have photocopiers? Why have 2 next to each other? So we're getting rid of some of them.
Okay.
So that's going to be less rental costs for us.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that also impacts the maintenance and repair of equipment then, as well?
Not really. They're on leases. They're pretty robust machines. What happened was Mr. Tetreau, again, it's his fault. We just moved the resources from 54310 up into fees and professional services. So there's no real increase at all. We didn't do anything differently there. We just moved the 50,000 up to fees and professional services.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm enjoying this. Do you want to hit him again?
I'm laughing to blame
Mr. Brown, have at it.
Actually, my question was just answered.
Oh, okay.
All right. I have one myself. I work in the media and publishing space, so our space is obviously going through a lot of what you're going through. And you're speaking of your concerns on technology. And you also, in answering Mr. Walsh's question, spoke to the necessity, at least in the near term, to support several different platforms. So what I'm interested in is what's the mid to long-term staffing model for the library look like in terms of you're going to need more of Jim, right? So you're going to have a ramp-up period where you're supporting all these platforms for a number of years. And then do you see staffing levels coming down as you have less platforms to support?
Well, you know you'd want me to say that, but I can't say that because technology, what I've known in the last 20 years of being around libraries is something else comes down the road that we hadn't expected. What's happening in libraries is not just technology is, libraries are just not about books anymore and shelves, and you go in there and you pick your book out and your librarian says, yes, that's a great book. What's happened in the library world now is we figured out we're community centers. So we're actually, with 37,000 people coming through our doors for programs last year, that's quite a nice rate, and we expect over 40 this year. So it's about shifting our staff to do things as they come and as they arise. So I can't give you an answer. I can tell you that we'll probably have another 2 platforms next year for digital devices, and we'll figure that out. Blio's one, you may have heard of it. There's another few coming out, so we're going to try then and make sure we choose the right one. But we cannot tell you in 10 years what the staffing is going to be like. It may be completely different from what I tell you tonight. I can't do that.
I would say it would be completely different. I just don't know whether it would be higher or lower.
Well,
opinion.
in my professional
It's gonna be-
opinion, it needs to be higher now.
I can see that. Here's another question. Here's another question for you on that. And this is something that I don't know that we necessarily do and I'm saying our board, not
Right.
the department heads, necessarily do the best job at. A couple of years, 3 years ago, we funded a new technology related to the checkout.
RFID.
Yeah. Can you give us an update on how that's going and what impact that's had?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
We're seeing about 13 to 15% of our circulation now through the self-checks.
Speak up.
Yeah, bring it closer to you. Don't be shy.
We'd like to see more than that.
How much are you seeing? I'm sorry.
About 13 to 15%. There are some libraries in the Midwest that get up to 90%. of self-checkout that way, of all their checkouts done self-checkout.
So we're only getting 13 to 15%.
Right. In this area, that's pretty much the standard because we also have a circulation desk. We've been told by some people if we placed them in the center of the desk instead of on the side of the desk, we would get more traffic directed to them. But the problem is the height is an issue, so little kids would be able to get up there and scan their books and stuff like that, so
So how much did we spend on that system 3 years ago?
about 200,000.
So we spent $200,000 on a new technology, and it's only being used 13 to 15% of the time?
Yes, but it also, that was actually a bargain discount price we got for that. Most systems were running about 300,000 at the time, so we got a pretty good deal on that.
You sound like my wife when she comes back from a sale.
Poor Amy.
But I will say, Jim's right in one way, because as, you know, Fairfield may have a population of 60,000, but when you come to the library, you want to deal with a person, and we're finding that out. Maybe if we had moved the RFID somewhere else so they couldn't talk to the person, people want to deal with a person more. It's got a small-town feel in our libraries. So maybe we did place it differently. I also said those machines aren't that robust now. And that was what, how many years ago was that?
7 years.
7 years ago. So it's almost like we have to
didn't do that 7 years ago.
6 years ago, so it was right around the time we opened the main library again.
Yeah, 7 years ago, July was when we opened
No,
the
I
main
wasn't on
library.
the board then. I remember the discussions when we funded this. It was during our tenure on the board. Couldn't have been 7 years ago.
Okay. It might have been
Mr. Chair, you're on your 7th year.
I know, it wasn't my first year. It wasn't my first year.
Well, then it was probably the 6th, because I've been here about 6, and it just was happening at my time.
I thought we did it over 2 years, too.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe the funding was in a year before that.
One of the reasons I asked the question is obviously you're having concerns on the staffing and resource allocation. And it would seem to me that the more you were able to have people help themselves
Right.
through using the self-checkout, the more resources you would have available to address some of the other legitimate concerns you have, given the volume. So it wasn't a gotcha question.
No.
It was just a question as to, you know, we have the system, we invested in the system, we were told it was really going to help you with the volume. Having only 13 to 15% of your people use it for a $200,000 investment doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies
Right.
that was money well spent. And now you have staffing issues, and legitimate staffing issues. And I would say the more people that you can have use the system, obviously the more resources you can put towards other endeavors.
But I would also say with our computer catalog system, now people can place their own holds electronically. They can register for programs electronically. They can register for summer reading electronically. They can print manage their stuff out of the computer labs electronically. As far as the computer catalog system, we've really stopped doing a lot of that manual thing. So in other parts of the library system, we've really done a nice job about, you know, directing people to do it themselves.
That's great. And if we get them on this one, all the more benefit that you can redeploy those assets, those people. So that's great. I congratulate you on that. Any other, Mr. Brockfield?
Just one thought, because it came to mind because I was in Home Depot today. Do you have somebody directing people to use the self-service? In other words, if you go to Home Depot, they have the self-service ones, and they actually have a
We'll have an
person-
additional staff to do that.
Well, not additional, and again,
Right.
I'm with Tom.
Right.
It sounds like you have a legitimate concern. I'm just thinking that these machines are,
They're right near the circ desk.
I know exactly where they are, and I'm just saying that it's very possible that there's a lot of people, A, who aren't familiar with them, or B,
Right.
there might be some people who are uncomfortable with them. Obviously, they may be, I don't want to say older, but they may be a
No.
little technology, you know, or whatever, afraid. And if there was a person there, if you had a 6-month program, for example, of where you tried to steer people towards it.
We did
and
that.
if you showed them how to use it.
We actually are all trained on that desk to jump out whenever we see someone having a problem, because, you know, technology isn't perfect and there are lots of problems with it. So we do go out there and ask them if they want help, and can we, you know, we'll show them.
But out of curiosity, in the whole time you've had it,
Mm-hmm.
right, did you ever have a person dedicated, standing there, steering people?
We can't
toward
afford
this?
to do that.
Well, we did it for a few weeks where we had people on 2-hour shifts standing there helping direct them, but it seemed like they were wasting their time because not everyone was using them all the time.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
People didn't always want to use them, so they were kind of felt like they were bothering people to ask if they wanted to try it. Those that did try it liked it and come back and use it over and over again. But some
So you-
people,
so you're-
it seemed like a waste of resources to have someone standing there solely to direct people to those machines for 9 hours,
I don't want to beat a dead
12
horse,
hours a
but you
day.
kind of contradicted yourself. You said to the extent you were able to steer people there, they enjoyed it and wanted to use
Those
it
that
more.
did it. But if there's 10 people standing in line to wait to check out, and 2 of them decide they want to do it, the other 8 don't, they get kind of upset that you asked them. The other drawback to that system is it requires you to have your library card with you. Whereas at the desk, you could just show your license and prove who you are, and they can look up your number for you. The system does not allow that. There are other newer systems that actually allow you to type in your number if you do know it, and your PIN number to get in, but our system does not allow that right now.
Could the systems we have be adapted to that technology?
The system we have now can't, but other ones could replace it and could do that. So the whole investment we did was in tagging the books, and every single item in the library has been tagged now. If we did choose RFID and we went with a traditional barcode system, you could have saved a lot of money, but you wouldn't have every material being able to be checked out by the self-checks. So CDs and DVDs and things like that would have to be checked out at the desk anyway. Only books and other things would be able to check out at the self-checks.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on the board when these decisions were made either, but it doesn't, the reason I'm pushing this just a bit is that it seems to me that with a more aggressive effort to steer people to use these things, it would allow you potentially at some point to relieve some of the pressure behind the desk, and maybe that one staff member could be put towards your needs. And I don't know, I would do everything short of forcing them to use it in order to figure out a way to get people to use these things. Maybe move them, instead of being off to the side where they really are, the truth is, kind of out of the way. Maybe they should be put in between the people. And as people come up to check out their book, they can say, hey, let me show you how to do it this way. It would really help us a lot if you did it this way.
Right. The problem is ADA compliance. The counter height right now is just at ADA compliance of, I think, 36 inches. With the machines being a desktop model, if they were sitting on top of that, they would be too high for someone in a wheelchair to reach. So we'd be out of compliance if we did that.
We could try moving them right away from the circ desk and see if people naturally go there. But that also costs, and we'd have to think it out. Well, we could think about that.
Yeah, I don't even want to begin to micromanage your business,
no.
but I'm just saying that in a situation where it doesn't sound like there's money
Yeah.
for another staffer.
I still think it's
there's-
really about, and I wasn't here for this decision either, but, I really think it's about people wanting to connect with people in the library. I really believe that.
Just one other thing. The only reason I would disagree with you is that I would say that pumping your own gas is a lot more unpleasant than checking out your own library book. I use it sometimes. It's very easy to just pass the thing over. And people have, through habit and being forced, now have to, I don't know where you can get full-service gas around here. I'm sure there's some. And people have adapted and do it. So I agree with you. If it's sitting there, if there's a person there doing it, most likely they'll go to the person because it is more pleasant to see somebody. And
Yeah.
it is unfortunate we have to have this conversation. In an ideal world, we'd have temples of libraries and we'd have tons
We
of staff
would.
and so forth, but obviously we're having
Right.
constraints. And I guess I would just urge you, again, not as a micromanagement, but because this is a kind of combining the financial aspect of it, to figure out a way to get people, 13, I must say 13% is a surprisingly low number. That's what it comes down to.
Mrs. McCarthy-V.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, not to beat this dead horse, I was at the main library recently and happened to go into the line, in the checkout line, and actually was wondering, why am I not doing this? And I'll use Stop and Shop as an example. The reason why I use self-checkout more there now is because there simply aren't the number of manned or woman stations open and available. So this actually, my comment would be, yes, if there is any way that we can encourage, cajole, force people to use that system, that would be great. And my question is, in terms of part-time professionals, because I know that you use a lot of part-time folks to do checkout, and also interested in the potential redeployment of resources, how many part-time professionals, or how many part-time folks are you using at this point?
About 80.
80 people. Okay. And is that number fairly steady, or does it vary?
It can be seasonal. We have students in the summer. We have students during holiday times.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to go to Mr. DeWitt, and then we'll go to Mr. Walsh.
I think Mrs. McCarthy, he's poking at what I'm going to poke at a little bit. If tomorrow we said you have to use RFID, you go to the library, you got to use it. Are you really freeing up the resources you need for something else? Are you freeing up your part-time people, your people that are not librarians or IT professionals? Is that the right place to reduce manpower for other purposes. Because in the skill set range,
Right.
that has to be one of the lower, no disrespect to
Right.
those fantastic volunteers, but they're not the ones that are going to go do and help you do your job, right?
No, they don't have as much specialty in the library or information science discipline, no.
So there's bang for the buck in that too, right? And the only other thing that discourages me about your counter height discussions, right, is the height of the counter is really not a good excuse for me. Going back to Stop and Shop, man, my son loves Stop and Shop because they got the wand. You can go and wand and stuff. And if that was on a low shelf, my kids would be RFIDing those books all the time. So that's just something, put it in the middle of the room or something. I know it's a fragile machine. We were looking at it that day. And maybe it needs to be watched over a little bit, and it's probably knock that number up a big percentage if just kids would be able to do that, right?
Right.
All set, Mr. Dewey? We're going to go to Mr. Walsh.
First, a compliment. That online catalog is great. I mean, to be able to be at my house and be able to look up a book for my son and know which branch it's at or where it is and that it is in stock without having to leave my house, I find fantastic.
Jim manages that
Yeah,
really well.
it's a great system. Ms. Ronald, can you just tell me, as you look forward in your profession in the future, what is going to happen? I understand and I agree with you that our libraries have become kind of a community center. But as we go to more digital libraries and things like that, are we going to be replacing books with digital copies as they wear out? Are we going to have more areas for computers? What are we going to be expecting to see, say, in the next 10 years at our libraries? And to the extent that you can tell us that.
It depends on what the community wants. I think there'll always be book lovers, and I think we'll always have a certain collection of books. I would expect they would be those that are out of print and you can't get copyright to get them digitized. Not everything is digital. We know that from Overdrive. We know there are some items we can't get. So I think there'll always be books. I also think, yes, there'll be more digital materials, and I still believe there'll be more program space because we are a community space. So you've got to marry all those together. I can't give you proportions. I don't know how it's going to go.
No, I'm not asking for proportions, I guess, but do you see more of the library, say the downtown main library, do you see more of the space there being used for computers, for people to come as a community center to do the research there and things like that?
Sure. We have a computer lab now that's busy, very busy, and we have express stations outside. Maybe we need more wireless access points. I know we need more study rooms right now because there's, groups, tutors, people who want to do independent study in a quiet area. We need to make sure those are all, they've got enough computers, they've got enough wireless access. I think really we should be thinking about media labs where kids can actually produce multimedia projects and possibly products for businesses in town. I can see that. Collaborative project work for both kids, young adults, and adults, almost like a learning lab. There are some learning labs that just got money from Museum and Library Services at the federal level, where they're going to actually have 3D printing machines and go beyond that, so people who can try out make their own products before they actually try to sell them. That's where libraries are going. They're getting into the creative end, and it's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we'll go to the public briefly for any comments. So I have to be a comment, not a question.
Alan Marks, Figler Avenue. I will try to keep this to a question.
Comment.
Excuse me, tried to slip that in there. Comment, yes. I work across the street from the Stamford Library, and I love our library. That's a great library as well. And one of the things about that library is they have this bookstore. And I know that's something that you guys are trying to get into as well, but they have this great room, and it's staffed by volunteers, and they seem to really sell a lot of books there, and it just might be a nice, some source of income for us.
We actually have that now. It's called Twice Read. It's across from the Circ Desk. It's run by volunteers, and we just started it a year ago. And we're bringing in, we don't bring it in, it's not operating, it's through a nonprofit, the Friends, and they're bringing in, I'm going to say $500 to $1,000 a month. So it's starting.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? There we go.
Hi, Ken Lee, Rhode Avenue. A few of those dollars are mine. I just have to speak in defense of technology once a night, whether it needs it or not. And boy, you do a heck of a job, because that's a pretty impressive pile of hardware and software to deal with. And I don't know what the answer is, but supporting that is going to be critical, because as people become more dependent on it, if those systems fail, then then our investment is for nothing. The other thing interesting about the RFID is that 100% of the materials that leave that library are scanned. So if you compare that to the amount of time it would do that manually, that certainly equates to a personnel cost savings. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
And carpal tunnel.
Right. Indeed. Any other comments? Seeing none, back to the board, Mrs. McCarthy-Vey.
Just a quickie, I've been talking about this with other department heads in terms of grants and looking at what kinds, just if you could help us with what kinds of grants, not now, but perhaps through.
I just got a FINRA grant for $50,000. Only one of 16 libraries got that nationally. That's the one I was talking about. We get grants from local businesses. We just rehabbed the Teen Services Department with technology and some programming there. We've gotten grants from Apple for a machine at the branch. So we're looking for them.
So, which is great, and a listing of what has come in via grant would be wonderful.
I just told you them.
Okay, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, I'd like to congratulate you on your success. Wish you the best of luck in continued success, and we'll be speaking with you soon.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to Penfield Pavilion Complex, Park and Recreation, and et cetera, et cetera. Hello, Mr. Lombardo. On our book, page 241 and 242 are the numbers for the Penfield Pavilion. Mr. Lombardo, do you have any quick comments before we look at the budget?
Good evening. With Penfield, it shows a slight increase, and it's mainly in the seasonal payroll, of which the reason for that is we are now going to be collecting at the gate at Penfield and at, excuse me, I'm sorry, seasonal payroll at Penfield is mainly due to the winter director that we handle all the rentals on site.
Is that paid for with an increase in revenue?
It's projected to. It's in our revenues.
How much is the revenue increase, just so we know?
Just did that last.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had it off the top. I was testing you to see if it's $8,000. I know, that's what I was concerned about.
No, our revenues for rentals.
Page 23, Penfield rental.
Our revenues for,
Up 13.21%.
yeah, right, and that was projected when we did the original pro forma. And I believe someone had asked
Penfield number 1.
on the board for a breakdown of the rentals. And what, after I had left the last meeting, I believe it was requested to, at our original review of the rentals, we had estimated $153,000 in income. Then we had to drop it to 147 because we weren't going to permit double rentals in the month of June. And then after, well, not a full year, we haven't had a full year of rentals, but we're projecting $120,000 in rentals from Penfield 1. And I will share this. And I think also there was a question on the rentals of facilities, and I have that attached to it, just for your...
Okay, any questions from board members? Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, all right, we're down on lockers, seasonal lockers, and we're down on daily lockers. We're up a couple $100 on sailboat storage, and we're up $14,000 on one rental. So what's the... So and the winter director is costing us, what, is it $8,000? Is that what that, is it that total increase from 75 to 83?
Yeah, approximately, yes. I also have,
So 14,
let me rephrase that, I thought I had.
and this winter director, all this person does is book Penfield 1 for the winter months, which we never could book before because we didn't
weren't.
have a facility that was capable of winter rental.
Right. He doesn't book it, we book through the office. Either he or my office manager. The office manager really maintains the rentals in the office. We communicate with this fellow by email, he's part-time. If the facility needs to be shown during the week, because a lot of people want to see it before they rent it.
Sure.
So he'll make appointments. If he can't do it, then my office manager will go down and show it.
And are we paying this person every hour he works, or we're not?
Yes, only
So
by
it's
the
an
hour.
hourly basis?
Yes. Okay. As well as going in and cleaning the facility. It's a much larger facility, and it needs to be cleaned regularly, particularly if we're trying to rent it and market as much as we are. I'm sorry, I thought I made extra copies of this, but I believe at the last meeting you also wanted a pro forma of how we do our facilities. And just to give you an idea, it's estimated with this budget, through our revenues, and then our salary and wages, operations, there is no capital this year, and our bonding, that we are estimating that the facility would bring in about $48,000 after, net income.
Can we
I will give
get
you a
copies
copy
of
of
that
this.
distributed? Yeah.
Yes, I'll give you, Mr. Chairman, this copy, and then I'll have Paul, I
That'd
thought I
be
made copies of this, and I didn't.
Thanks, sir. That'd be appreciated.
Linda?
It shows the history.
Thank you very
Linda,
much.
what's the revenue line? Because it's truncated, I can't read it. Is it 42,509 for Penfield rental? Or 42,510? I can't, I'm just curious what the year-to-date.
42,510.
42,510. So right now, we're at about 50% on revenue. 106,000. We've actually got revenue of 55,800. But we're coming into the busy season, right?
Yeah, this is when we're taking in, a lot of the revenues that we're showing right now, and as on this sheet, it'll explain it. Right now, we're anticipating at the end of the year, we'll have $92,000. Okay, this was as of March 1st, just for Penfield 1 rentals. And I had anticipated, back when we did the pro forma, that we would lose, and I believe it was some of the members of this board said, we're probably going to lose some rentals over at Penfield 2 because they're going to try out Penfield 1. So I believe we took off about 15,000 on that. I think we went down to 85,000. It's going to be a year to 2 years before we really get a benchmark as to where we're going to plateau at, and hopefully be able to even increase it from there. But we don't have a good benchmark yet. We didn't have it open all of July or August. Well, excuse me, July last year. And we didn't, I think we opened the last couple of weeks of August. I think we had 1 or 2 rentals that we rushed to get open. So we weren't able to even push the rentals for the early on. But I think that we will eventually make our mark.
All set, Mr. DeWitt? We'll go to Mr. Walsh.
Jerry, on the maintenance repair of buildings / grounds, the line goes up 10%. Are you, from your earlier comments, are you saying that that's because the new building is larger? Benfield 1 is larger and needs more cleaning expenses?
Yeah, that. We have the outdoor bathrooms, another set of outdoor bathrooms. Unfortunately, we do have some vandalism that we have to clean up after, fix, and we're just trying to stay on top of it. We used to have 2 lines, as you can see there. We used to have maintenance and repair of buildings and grounds and maintenance and repair of materials. And they used to be totaling about $10,000 total. We removed the maintenance repair. We made it 1 line of 5,000, and I just foresee an increase, a small increase this year, just to, try to stay on top of it.
All right. The reason I was asking is obviously the new facility is brand new, so we shouldn't really have much maintenance other than the cleaning expenses on it and vandalism.
Cleaning, you'd never know. I mean, we have, during the seasonal, we have thousands of people going through that facility. And one thing I don't want to do is have it run down, saying that, oh, well, I didn't have the money, or, I'm having the staff stay on top of it. And as I said, it's a small amount in the big scope of things.
Thank you.
Any other? Mr. Stone, did you have something?
Are we actively marketing it? And if we are, how are we marketing? Because we have 2 facilities now.
Mainly, right now, we don't, I'm not
There's no marketing line here, right?
No, if I did the marketing, it would be either coming out of special department supplies or out of my recreation budget. But we do plan on getting a full-scale marketing plan going. But right now, a lot of it's just through our webpage. But we're really just trying to get our feet wet here.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. So are we being underutilized now, basically?
No, I would say because we're in our winter months, we're overutilized because we never had it open before.
Right, but we
So I don't have a
Increased
benchmark.
capacity is what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Could you rent it out more than you currently are?
Oh, yes.
That's what I'm...
Yes.
And what about this summer? We're pretty well booked?
It's filling up.
Okay.
It's filling up.
Mr. Stone, are you good?
Yeah. My only thing is, when I look at this and you have 2 facilities, we probably have to do some marketing. It can't be all word of mouth. But I know you want to get your feet wet.
Mr. Kiley?
Just a quick one. Jerry, what is your deposit policy, for instance, if somebody wants to rent one of the facilities in general? Do you take a certain percentage up front?
I think it's 50% down, or...
Okay, that's fine. Let's say it's 50%. If I'm going to rent for August 1st, and I write the check for a deposit on June 15th, where does that first half of the monies, where does that 50% hit? Which budget is it going to hit?
It hits the revenue.
Right,
but
but
the
which year?
balance doesn't hit until the day of the rental.
So maybe my question's for Paul, just quickly.
Current year.
So half of it would hit June this year, half of it would hit August next year.
Oh, okay, that's what you meant, okay, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Okay, thanks.
Is it non-refundable, non-cancelable?
For the most part, unless you, we try to hold to that. There is a fee for, if you cancel 2 weeks.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is you don't give the money back if they cancel.
I give a portion of it back.
That's fine, I'm good.
Anybody else? Seeing none. Anything from the public? None? Okay, Parks and Recreation is next.
Again, this is a small increase, 1%. In the seasonal payroll, there's an increase. What we've done is we have a special needs program, and if you go down to rental and storage, you'll see a significant decrease in our budget there of $20,000. We had to make a decision. It was a difficult decision. We provided busing for our summer playground program for the special needs over the years, and we have approximately 40 youngsters participating in that, and it fluctuates. The busing costs have been going up dramatically each year, and it was going to be costing us about $40,000 this coming year for busing. So we are no longer going to be providing busing for the youngsters to and from the program. So what we've decided to offset that is to start the program an hour earlier and go 9 to 3 rather than 10 to 3. That would help the parents get them. It'd be the same as our other program that we offer that does not have busing. The children that are, I guess it's PBT by the Board of Ed, if they have a special needs, if they say that they are, because they bus to their summer school program, they will bus, if a child is directed to go to our program or wishes to go to our program, the school brings them to whatever site we're at. But then it's the parent's obligation to get them, pick them up and get them home. But it was just beginning to be an expense that when we were looking at the numbers, as difficult a decision it was, not to provide busing anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardo. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on this budget? Mrs. McCarthy-Vey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Lombardo. That is a difficult decision, and just wondering what were some of the other options that you weighed that against in terms of any other possibilities, or was it simply the increase in the cost being significant enough?
That's what drove it. We checked with seeing if there was any grants available to provide it, help off with or offset the cost. There were none. My staff checked with the Kennedy Center to see if there was anything there, and there wasn't any availability there. So it was really looking at the numbers and saying, how do you justify it? Basically, it was $1,000. And we don't charge for the program other than a minor, I think it's $50. I'm not even sure what the expense is. And that's taking care of pizzas or things of that nature, whatever activities we might be doing inside the program.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns on this budget? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Nothing? Okay, we're going to go to the waterfront and the marina next.
Again, this budget is
Page 248 are the numbers. 367,849 to 394,803. Vast majority being in the payroll lines and then printing and binding.
In the payroll, besides the normal increase for the youngsters coming back, 25 cents, here is where I started to say earlier, we'll be having parking fees and from till 8 o'clock at night at Penfield and at Jennings Beach, rather than stopping at 6.
What's the impact on revenue on that?
We did it it's probably going to be an extra $20,000 to $30,000 on the low side.
And how much is the additional expense?
It's about $7,000.
Okay. Okay.
But it was offset by moving some of the other, seeing that I didn't spend in other areas. That's why it's not fully impacted in the amount showed. And then the printing and binding, we're doing more by internet. And we felt that we could lower that. We always knew that was our goal, to lower it. We're probably at the number that it'll remain. But eventually, and I heard the question asked earlier about postage, and this is mainly due to beach stickers. So we do, our postage, if more people do it online, eventually our postage is going to be going up because we do have to send them out. So, but our analysis shows that we should be able to make it within our budget lines as presented.
Any other, Mr. DeWitt?
There's an incentive to do it online, right? Isn't it cheaper to do it online? There's some incentive, right? I thought.
No, the incentive is you don't have to, it's easier for you. You get
Go
it
to
the next.
Independence Hall?
Yeah, you get it the next day, or within 2
Okay.
days, unless you do it on a weekend. But if you do it on Monday, you should have it at your home by Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's easier for you, okay? It's an incentive
I
from.
do that online all the time, I mean, because
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's an incentive on our part to get it because it's less office work, because we don't, and less mailings, because we don't have to send out applications. And my staff, okay, had to really diligently show to me that we don't have to keep sending out applications. The internet is there, and they've done a great job of really promoting it.
So the system's smart enough to know that, I'm making this up right, April 15th, you're going to send out letters to everybody in this room for their beach sticker, and if I've already signed up, the system's smart enough to say, don't send DeWitt a letter? Because I seem to remember paying for it and then getting a letter anyway.
We send out notices
Yep.
saying, hey, it's time to, don't forget, don't wait till Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah.
okay, to buy your stickers. So the staff does set up a letter and send it out, but that's not, the machine's not smart enough. My staff has to do that. Maybe in our new versions, as we upgrade, they might have some features like that. But the system that we use is wasn't made for what we're using it for on the beach sticker end. It's made for everything else.
Right.
But we're making it work for our needs.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions, Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up, I think that your department does a great job with utilizing technology, and I appreciate that, especially as it saves money for our town, so thank you. My question is actually related to some of the commentary on page 247, ensuring that South Benson Marina is well-maintained. And I know that there are a number of different departments who work down there, the police department, public works, yourself, and this is kind of a comment/question. I'm hoping that we coordinate services effectively there so that we're not duplicating costs and spending money that we don't need to spend, and I'm just wondering how you can help me and the boards to understand how that happens efficiently and effectively.
That's an easy one. Basically, the $30,000 under maintenance, repair of buildings and grounds in the waterfront, that is for the marina. Okay? At one time, it used to be in the $60,000 range, or, excuse me, 50,000, yeah, 50 to 60,000. We took that fund several years ago and put it back over to recreation. That was for redoing the tennis courts, painting and lining cracks of that. But that 30,000 is mainly for the marina. And it's overseen, well, it's in this budget because what we tried to do is keep the cost that we know that we reoccur every year in here. And Rich White and Robin Bimmel, who oversee the marina, are in charge, handle that. So Rich knows where he has his funds, and he works with, obviously the DPW does the majority of the work down there. But a lot of this is like dredging, and we use that number as well as others, because when Rich puts his budget together for the commission, to show the fees versus the versus expenses, and what he's going to charge for slips, he shows not only what he has here, but what he has in DPW also. So, but this is strictly for Rich and for Robin, for when they need electrical work or things of that nature that reoccurs regularly, and that's why it stays basically at 30,000.
Just as a follow-up, do you happen to know how much is in the DPW budget for the marina?
No, I don't, because I'm sure that's all under I do not.
I can ask Rich.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll go to the public on the marina. Okay. And then we'll go to the golf courses. Thank you, Mr. Lombardo.
I have two gentlemen here tonight, Chairman Craig Curley and Peter Grace, the superintendent.
Good evening, gentlemen. Just to remind the board, when we first started our budget conversations on the revenue night, we had asked for the P&Ls for the golf courses, and we did receive those P&Ls over a several-year period, full costed with, I believe, the bonding costs as well as the unemployment
Bond costs and unemployment costs, fully loaded cost.
Right, which did show that over the past number of years, the golf courses have either broken even or they've made money.
Yeah.
Right.
Always been a surplus.
Always been a surplus. A couple of years it was very slight.
Close.
Very close, right. So thank you for the information. And I just want to remind the board that we had received that, the boards that we received. So we'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
The Carl Dickman Golf Course is approximately 5% lower, almost 6% lower than previous year. And that's primarily due to the
Yeah, okay, that didn't work well. Live TV, who knows what can happen. Okay.
that's primarily to do with the capital request. We're only asking for a greens roller, and everything else is staying virtually status quo.
Okay, questions, comments on this right now? And this is showing that on a profit and loss basis, that it will, this one golf course will make about $10,000 if you play the number of rounds. Okay. Other questions, comments on this item? Seeing none? To the public on this? None? Okay, we'll go to Smith Richardson, which is 253 in our budget book. Again, it's revenues expect to be $1,751,000. Expenses to be $1,627,000. Correct? So roughly 120. Okay.
Yeah. This budget's going to, we're anticipating a slight loss in that budget.
Is that right?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I just want to set the record. I believe in the Part 3, as much as I'd like to say we were making $10,000, we anticipate about a $7,600 loss if we hold true.
Okay, so
to-
the budget books, so this is, which number's wrong in the budget book? The 302? 'Cause
I
that
got
page-
302.
3026 for revenue.
Right, and I have 292 in expense. Is that because it's not fully loaded? Right.
Unless- I'm
The
sorry?
The unemployment
Oh,
comp. It's the
okay.
unemployment comp.
Okay.
Okay. Fair point, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, in the budget book, just do,
So the golf carts are $302,600 revenue.
292 in expense, but that doesn't include any unemployment benefits like we
Right.
talked about earlier.
That's
So, right,
So we're losing money.
about $7,500 on the one golf course, right?
Right.
Okay, on the other golf course, not fully loaded, projected to make about 120,000. If you load in the other expenses, where do we stand on that?
About a $46,000
$46,000 gain.
to the good.
So,
Net for both, it's still positive.
like $40,000 positive net, and that includes some investment within the golf courses,
Right.
correct?
That includes our bonding.
Right. Okay, questions on Smith Richardson? We'll go to Mr. Brockfield.
Just a quick one. You guys mentioned that on the par 3, it was built with the intention of around 15,000 rounds. You're getting something like 30, which is obviously great if you can manage it. And then on the Rich Smith, you say it was built for 36 to 40, but you don't mention the actual rounds played.
Yeah, I think last year we were just about 39,000, round up to 40. It was closer to 40 than, it might have been 39.8.
It was 39.6.
Is that typical? Because last year we had bad weather, didn't we?
Yeah.
Right.
Very low.
I think typically we've been operating in the 40 to 45,000 round range. So last year was the
is
lowest stretch in quite some time.
And is that, I'm just thinking of some of your competing courses. I'm thinking of Sterling, for example, and Stamford, and maybe you know better than I do. Is that other comparable?
It was. One of the things that our Golf Pro provides on a monthly basis to the Golf Commission is a state of the game review for area courses throughout Connecticut. And we were down about 11% in our rounds last year, and that's consistent with surrounding golf courses.
Okay.
So it's
Great.
attributable to weather.
Thank you very much.
The other thing, and I mentioned last month, is that we also had 23.6 inches of rain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
And
quite a bit of
and
rain.
it happens on a weekend. We had 11 weekends that got rained out, and that's normally our biggest revenue-producing days.
But on the bright side, we've already had 700 rounds this month, so,
Nice.
and 300 over par 3.
Great. Go ahead, Mr. Bolito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the capital request, specifically the two mowers, I'm not a big golf expert, so it's probably a stupid question, but why do you need two different mowers for the greens and for the fairways? Is it just the way it's
Fairway
done?
mower is bigger. The fairways are larger, it's 25 acres of fairway up there, so you need a larger mower, and the greens are only like an acre, acre and a half, so you just need a smaller mower, and, the bigger the mower, the more compaction, more tracks you're gonna make, so the greens are my baby, so I gotta take care of them with the smaller mowers.
Okay, so it's not so much the height of the grass as it is the ability to cut a large swath
Well,
of the
that too.
fairways.
No,
Well, it's the height of grass, too.
Oh, it is too? Okay.
Yes, very much so.
Different reels, you got heavy-duty reels for the fairways, because you're gonna run into a lot more things out there, and the greens are very fine, and so you need the
Okay.
finer reels, 11-blade reels, if that helps.
No, it does, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. DeWitt?
Quick question on revenue. H. Smith Richardson ID cards. Are those the Parks and Rec ID cards that you get for anything, right?
Yes.
So that's $200,000 of revenue. Why do we associate that only with H. Smith Richardson?
No.
Because people buy those ID cards for other things, right?
Right, but each one of them, the ID card is good. It's got a magnetic stripe on it.
Yep.
You use that card for golf, there's a fee to play golf. There's
Yep.
a fee to play tennis. So you don't get into the tennis center unless we show that you paid it. So
So you
the computer
allocate it.
knows it. Okay, it goes to your account.
Which is exactly my point.
Okay.
So you're saying $200,000 directly, $200,000 of revenue directly to H. Smith Richardson's bottom line.
Yes.
When 100,000 of it might be just
No.
tennis.
No,
just-
No?
No,
Oh, so
that's
total
specifically
allocated.
allocation.
Yeah.
Strictly allocated.
So $200,000, people spend $200,000 just to play golf with that ID card.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. And that's fair, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Anybody in the public? None? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Good luck
Thank you.
with the weather.
Thanks.
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Now we're on to the not-for-profit organizations. Page 89 is, I believe, the start. Mr. Hiller, you'll tell me if that's wrong. That's Regional Youth Adult Social Action Partnership. We're going to do this in a question and answer format, so just come on forward, and if there's any questions. First of all, I want to say to the agencies, thank you very much. I understand it's a late night. Quite honestly, the agenda was printed and distributed, and we need to follow the agenda, so we couldn't move you forward earlier in the evening. I hope you understand that, and I'm sorry to bring you out and keep you out so late on one night a year.
Thanks for the coffee, it worked, actually. So.
All right. You mean the conversation wasn't keeping you awake? It had to be the
Some of
coffee. All right. So do we have any questions, comments from board members on the Regional Youth Adult Social Action Partnership? Anything here?
Could we just have our presenters or our people answering introduce themselves?
Please.
Robert Francis, I'm the Executive Director of RISAP.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. I don't see anything, and we have a pretty good write-up here, and the budget is consistent, I believe, with the prior year, correct? The request.
That's right.
Okay. No comments from the public? Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey?
Just a quick question, have the results from the latest survey been turned back into the town? I know we had some issues with that, so is that
really
resolved?
Pretty interesting. Something that happened in Fairfield with our latest survey is that we did the survey last spring, and then we found a glitch where the 11th grades got mixed up with the Trumbull surveys, and so we just resurveyed all of the Fairfield kids, and that data came in today, so I didn't get a chance to look at it. If it's consistent with the other towns, we'll see reductions on the substance abuse side almost across the board. One of the most dramatic things that we saw in all the towns are the gender differences between boys and girls, with girls doing much better than boys in almost all the categories that are there. But we'll have to see the Fairfield data to see whether that holds up in Fairfield, but that certainly has been the case in Monroe and Stratford and Bridgeport. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Okay, we'll go to the next budget, which is the Pequot Library, page 92 through 95, and very consistent with the prior year of $350,000. Good evening, Mr. Schneidecker. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Dan Snydacker. I'm the Executive Director of Pequot Library. Great to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for staying so late.
Yeah.
Mr. DeWitt, did you have some follow-up questions from your earlier commentary?
Yeah, just the same question of the town librarian. Surprising to me that more people go to Main and Woods to pull from the Pequot collection than vice versa.
It's not that more people do that. It's just that the percentage over last year has increased.
Okay.
And what that says is that our
collection have that the Main and the Woods
we,
don't?
as Mrs. Ronald indicated, our collections dovetail, supplement each other, and because of this interlibrary system that we've got, we can do that. These three libraries that serve the town of Fairfield can work together to create a really great multidimensional collection. Our collection has improved dramatically over the past couple of years, and people are learning that. They learn about it online, they learn about it by word of mouth, and they're coming to us at an increasing rate. That doesn't mean that we're eating into the main library's business. It's just a function of the increase in interest in our collection. Means our collection is getting better and stronger, and people are asking for it more.
And how much of your total budget is from
About
from the town, and how much is from?
Right.
Personal
About a third. We're actually a great model for a public service organization. We get about a third of our budget from you, and we raise the rest ourselves. Keeps us busy, keeps us connected to our audience. We have to respond to what our audience wants, provide them with the services they want. So we get about $350,000 from you, and we raise the rest of our $1 million budget through a variety of fundraising activities. Our annual fund, our big book sale. We do fundraising events. We have other. We do some rentals.
Great, thank you. That's all for me, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, comments for Pequot Library? Seeing none, anything from the public? Great. Mr. Snyder, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to go to page 96 and 97, Fairfield Consulting Services. Counseling, consulting. Yeah, it's been a long day. Counseling services, $175,000. The request remains flat year over year. Good evening.
We can consult. Good evening. I'm Dorothy Timmerman, Executive Director, Fairfield Counseling Services.
Thank you for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Okay. Anything that you'd like to say? Real quick?
Thank you, for one thing. We're busy. I just keep thinking we're going to reach some plateau, but that is not happening yet. We expect to provide over 9,000 sessions this year, so it keeps growing and growing and growing. We've added some groups for girls for body image and cyberbullying, which is really, the cyberbullying is really quite a problem for adolescents. So we just added the services in response to the community.
Thank you very
So
much.
we do, thank you.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll go to the Discovery Museum, which is pages 98, 99. Budget request remains flat, $24,000 year over year. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Jeff Bishop. I'm the Executive Director of the Discovery Museum, and I have with me Alan Winnick. He is the Director of Education at the Discovery Museum. We want to thank you for all your support.
Thank you, gentlemen, for staying this evening. Do we have any questions from board members? Again, please note, and I think you all do, that we have, A, many of us have been doing this for a number of years. B, we have some good write-ups in the book that help us along, so we're familiar. So I just want to make sure that anybody has questions, they're answered. Mr. DeWitt?
I'm going to have a basic question for the ones that don't address it in here. What's total, what total of the town funds is your total operating budget?
The total operating budget for the Discovery Museum?
Yeah.
Is $1.8 million.
So 24,000 out of 1.8 million.
Yes, sir.
So where does that specifically go? I mean, I've read it's just peanut buttered into your budget, kind of?
Well, we pride ourselves in the fact that we are experts as it relates to STEM education. So a big part of our mission is to be the ones that inspire the scientists, the inventors, the business leaders of tomorrow. So we do a lot of educational outreach and a lot of educational programming. So we service within a 50-mile radius of the Discovery Museum, and of course, Fairfield is within that 50-mile radius, so we pride ourselves in being the educators as it relates to STEM education.
And as with many not-for-profit organizations, our budget is a complex patchwork of grants, donations, and other sources of funding. And $24,000 is not a large part of our budget, but we want to stay in the game. We want to help Fairfield very much, and we're actually hoping to be able to increase that over time because the demand from the Fairfield schools is most certainly there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, anybody from the public? No? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you. All right, the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council, formerly the Greater Bridgeport Regional Planning Agency, pages 100 through 102. $18,000 is the budget request, and it is flat with the prior year. Good. How are you?
Good evening. My name is Brian Bedolia. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Council.
Brian, welcome. Thank you for staying. Do we have any questions or comments from board members on this budget?
I do, actually. What is this?
Mr. DeWitt?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay, great.
Mr. DeWitt?
Hi. This is one of our, we have four, what I call mandated contributions. And it's regulated under a state section 8.34A. But I don't know how the $18,000 is calculated. There's supposed to be a formula. I'm like totally clueless. I don't need it tonight, but do you have any idea how we calculate this?
Yeah, the formula was actually developed in the early 80s, and it was based on grand list, population, and geographic size
Okay.
of the town. So it's spread out disproportionately, I guess, in terms of our 6 towns in our region.
Okay.
But it accommodates for, your population size. It's consistent with other federal formulas to calculate
Okay.
those.
Because a lot of the state statutes, there's literally a formula. Plug in the grand list, plug in your plug, and you get a number at the end. So we've been fairly consistent on this over the years in this contribution, and it hasn't changed. And our grand list changes all the time. So I'm curious to the real formula.
Yeah.
Just because this is one of our mandated.
We are actually, the formula isn't consistent across the regions in Connecticut or throughout the country.
Okay.
Each region is allowed latitude in terms of developing their formula. We are the second lowest in the state in terms of the dues we assess. The quantitative base for it is a little bit, it's not stagnant, it's somewhat dynamic, but we definitely try to be sensitive to the needs of the towns and their budgets. And we try to do more of a fee-for-service based, so if you wanted a special project from us, then we could find the federal funds and source the funds from you directly rather than having a recurring match requirement.
Okay, it's not getting me, I understand what you're saying. It's just when someone says to us, you need to give us $18,053, I go, well, there must be a formula, because who would come up with $18,053?
Yeah, and I wish I could give you the equation,
Yeah.
but we searched it in our minutes and everything, and it's kind of nebulous in terms of our internal, so we just kept it the same year over year as it's been. It's basically what it works out to be is 10% of the federal money we get. So you leverage $9 on every dollar that you give us.
Okay, 10%.
Yeah, the local share, we have an 80-10-10 split, so 80% is federal funds of our agency, 10% is state funds, and the other 10% comes from our local contributions. And
8% federal, 10% state. Okay.
10% local. We couldn't access the federal funds if we didn't have,
And the last 10% of individual comes from Greater Bridgeport, so that's us, Bridgeport, Trumbull, kind of
Stratford, Easton, and Monroe.
towns. Correct. Thank you, that helps. Thank you.
All right, any other, Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey?
Thank you. And just to follow up, so there's a formula, but not exactly sure. And I guess my question about that is, you've kept it year over year for us. How does that compare to what you've done in the other towns?
Yeah, they're all the same year over year as it's gone forward. I think since we've now transitioned to a council of elected officials, this discussion would be a good one to have in terms of locking in a certain formula for, sustainability moving forward of our local contribution.
That would be great, so I'll encourage our chief elected official to participate in that with you. It would be helpful for us to have more clarity on that moving forward.
I will do my best.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, nothing from the public? Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You as well. The Audubon Society, page 103 and 104. The request is $15,000. That is consistent with the prior year. And based on a sheet of paper we have just been handed, it represents 13.36% of their operating budget for the year.
Hi, Nelson North, Director of Fairfield Operations.
Thank you very much for coming this evening.
My pleasure.
Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns on this budget request? Seeing none, anything you would like to say, sir, or anything from the public? Good man, when you made the sale, you keep quiet.
Walk away.
There we go. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Don't give us another opportunity.
All right. Greater Bridgeport Transit Authority, page 105 and through 107. And this is $5,000, or no, I'm sorry, $30,000.
$30,000.
Yeah, the wrong line item, and that is 0.15% of their budget. So, good evening.
Hey, good evening. My name's Tom Gorman, Finance Officer for the Greater Bridgeport Transit.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman, for being here. Do we have questions, comments, or concerns? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. This is another one of our mandated contributions. Last week, we talked about the fact that in the current budget, the 2011-2012 budget, we allocated $30,000 to the GBTA, and we found out that that $30,000 was going to be taken and put toward our Oldfield Senior Citizens new van, which is great news. But I thought this was a mandated, required contribution, and that would lead me to believe that it's not mandated, nor do I have state statutes that say this is a mandated contribution.
Chris, go ahead.
I think there's some confusion on this. There were two separate appropriations. There was one within the Human Services Department, which was for the paratransit contract, which is separate and apart from our contribution towards the operation of the Greater Bridgeport Transit District, which ourselves, Stratford, Trumbull, and Bridgeport are responsible for. And so there were two separate $30,000 appropriations, and perhaps Tom can explain the $30,000, which is being covered and the service is being provided.
Yeah, the $30,000 that you were talking about was covered under their Human Services budget, and that has been replaced with a municipal grant that we provide additional services for ADA-eligible riders. So we manage that grant for the town of Fairfield, so we no longer require that $30,000 subsidy.
From Human Resources?
From your Human Services.
Human Services.
Okay.
So that grant is from the state of Connecticut.
But that grant is
So we
running
still
through the transit district.
That's correct. Yeah.
They are providing the services which we had budgeted for. That's why we were able to recommend to take that $30,000, which exists in the current year's budget, and use that towards the...
That's a line item in this year's current Human Services.
And recommended for next year at zero. But it's a line item that's in this year's budget, which had previously been appropriated, but is not going to get spent for that purpose.
Okay. Okay, I got that then. But again, the same question. What document tells us that we owe you $30,000 or $25,333, and where's the formula? That's been my question for the better part of a couple years now.
There is no formula that I know of that exists. It's been a historical contribution since the district was created, when all 4 member municipalities joined. I believe it started at approximately $15,000 a year, and it has grown to where it's at right now. And it's in line with what the other 3 towns are paying. It's just over $120,000 total.
So, what towns are we talking about that all pay this?
Bridgeport, Fairfield, Stratford, and Trumbull.
Stratford and
4
Trumbull.
towns.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, anybody from the public? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Okay,
I
thank you.
appreciate you coming in tonight. All right, we're going to move on to the Fairfield Museum and History Center, pages 108 through 110. Good evening, Mr. Jaley, how are you?
Good evening.
The contribution requested is flat this year, $50,000, and $50,000 last year. Last year was an increase of about $17,500 over prior years. Thank you, sir, for coming tonight.
Mike Jaley, Executive Director of the Fairfield Museum. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Jaley? Mr. Walsh? We'll go to
Mr.
Mr.
Jaley, how are you tonight?
Hi, Jim.
Good. Remind me what the increase was for last year?
The increase really, I think, restored a historic lag in town support. As we've grown considerably over the last 5 years from the Fairfield Historical Society, now serving an exponential increase in students and adults and families in Fairfield. The request that we made last year was to sort of help offset the increased private investment that we've been asking our supporters to do to make that possible.
Okay. And how's fundraising been going, say, in the current year since that last request?
It's been, it continues to be a challenge. I think that, we are supported we are a private nonprofit. We are supported, 95% of our budget comes from private support. We still enjoy a broad support from individuals. I think corporate sponsorship has gotten a bit challenging in the past year, but we still work hard. It's mostly what I do. Try to keep it coming in.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, the $50,000 represents just about 5%.
About 5% of our overall budget, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Bolito and then Mr. DeWitt.
Good evening. In terms of the customers you get through the front door that are, taking advantage of the programs you have, do you find that a lot of those people are coming from out of town, or is it in town? What do you find that your customer base is, so to speak?
It's nice to report it's an increase on both fronts. I think that as many of you know, as schools adjust their investments in social studies and arts and culture curricula, we find, particularly for Fairfield schools, we have a very close partnership with the public schools, we're filling in that gap. And so every year the number of Fairfield students that we serve increases in numbers, the number of grades that we do ads on every year. We're also getting increased interest from surrounding towns. We now serve a number of grades in Westport schools, increasingly in Norwalk, and we try to serve as many students as we can in the Bridgeport area as well. So primarily our core still comes from Fairfield and the immediate surrounding communities and still is our core audience. But to make ourselves more viable, we try to service what we see as our reasonable impact zone, and that's sort of Norwalk to Bridgeport, east and west and Reading.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeWitt?
As far as Fairfield's classroom students, is that free of charge?
We do a range of sort of formula. What we do is we heavily subsidize those visits. We do charge students $3 a head for programs which usually, last a couple hours. Those fees are typically paid for either by the schools from their discretionary fund or more often from the PTAs in the schools that see it as part of their extracurricular activities fund.
Right. And individuals walking in off the street, like me when I walk in there, we pay as well.
Well, we're free for members. We're members because we're a private nonprofit. We're member supported, so we're free to our members. It is the best deal in town at $30 a year. So, if you paid $30, you could come any day of the week that you wanted to come.
Maybe I'm missing out there.
But for non-members, we do charge a small admission fee. Yes.
Yeah, it's just when I hear we're servicing Fairfield, like Audubon Society is free. We walk in, we're Fairfield people. We walk in, everything's free.
Right.
But when you're servicing Fairfield at a cost. A diminished cost, I grant you, but at some cost.
It is at some cost, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
We try to provide an accessible mix of, fee-for-service and free programming. We do offer also quite a bit of free programming to make ourselves universally accessible, so we don't charge for everything.
Only when you come in, Chris. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Tetreau.
I would just take a moment to point out that in addition to providing service, they also, the library or the museum and Historical Society, do manage 5 of our town properties. The Burr Mansion, the Sun Tavern, Bronson Windmill, Victorian Cottage and Barn, and the 1812 Powder House. And having had a chance to visit one of the fundraisers this summer at the Sun Tavern, what I saw was how much renovation work is going on there as part of the plan to bring that literally back to life as part of our history and heritage. So I think the museum is definitely doing a lot of work, a lot of investment with in our heritage with this money. So I just wanted to point that out.
I think we could say that we do represent a nice model for other communities in the state on that public-private partnership. Through the management agreement that Mr. Tetreau speaks of, we've been able to save, restore, and soon we'll be opening up a lot of these historic properties. So it's a good partnership, to no cost to the town.
Mr. Jaley, thank you. You've done a great job with that museum. I've enjoyed going to many of the programs there myself, so
Great.
thank you.
Well, thank you all for your support.
Yeah. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. We'll see you soon. The Fairfield Veterans Advisory and Information Service, it's 111 and 112. It was $3,400 last year, same $3,400 this year. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to this Southwestern Connecticut EMS Council, that's pages 113 and 114, $3,000, same as last year. Comments, questions, concerns, anybody? Okay, seeing none, none from the public. We'll go to the Southwestern Regional Mental Health Board, pages 115 and 116, same amount as last year, $9,476. Good evening. Please just introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Kim O'Reilly. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Regional Mental Health Board.
Thank you very much. Thank you for staying on a late evening.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments on this? Mr. DeWitt?
It's my same question. I'm looking for a formula that gets us to $9,476.
We asked per capita from all the towns about 16 cents per capita. Based on population, it's not a mandated formula. It's what our board has determined as fair funding level.
And is that, we had this discussion last year, Mr. Hiller. The Connecticut statute that mandates this has been repealed and has not been replaced. So is this really a mandated, not that it's not a worthwhile, don't let me lead you to believe it's not worthwhile, but is this a mandated contribution for our town?
I'm not quite clear where you got where it had been repealed. The statute that established the boards and the funding of the boards is statute 17A. Hold on.
17A 481. 17481 is repealed effective July 1, 1997.
Yes, but it's 17A 484.
It's 44 now.
Yeah. It goes on. Within those statutes, they repeal and they add on to things.
Right, that's the date I didn't have from before, so
Okay.
thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, to the public?
Well, thank you for your continued support. I just want to state that we really appreciate Chief McNamara's support of training his officers in the Crisis Intervention Team Program. It's really helped have them gain the skills to respond to 911 calls when people are in psychiatric crisis, and we've really seen a huge impact. So thank you very much for the Fairfield Police Department.
Thank you very much, and good evening. All right, we're going to go to the Southwestern Regional Communication Center, 117 through 118. This budget's 52,386 versus 50,969 last year. We have a representative. Come on down. You're the next contestant.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Merwin. I'm the Director of Southwest Regional.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns on this? Mr. DeWitt?
I'm like a broken record, except this one keeps going up. Section 28347C, state statute. The commissioner determines the funding from each community. That's what is stated in the statute. So what's the formula that gets us a constant increase every year? 2.7%.
I'm not familiar with the statute you just read, sir.
I have a state statute that was conveyed to me by the fiscal officer of why this is a mandated contribution for the town of Fairfield.
The statute are you referring to is the credit from the E911?
Boy, you got me in that one. It's a state statute.
Mr. Hiller, can you help us out a little bit?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Being
Moving right
honest.
along.
That,
I like that.
To the point.
That's your briefest answer all night.
In
he's
full
got nothing.
disclosure,
Quite as
Well,
succinct
it's the
as
same
no, but
question.
not-
What's the formula that gets us there?
The formula, or the formula is a per diem based on the region, for the 14 towns in Region 1. And the formula is factored based on per capita.
So it's a per capita?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the amount per capita, or how's this?
Well, it's approximately 88 cents per capita after the credit.
88 cents after a credit.
30 cents, right?
The credit is 30 cents, that's correct.
The credit's 30 cents, and it's 8, okay.
credits 30 cents, which we just got notification of. That we did just get notification of within the last day or two from the state.
Okay.
Some
Can you follow up on the other
$17,000.
item for us? Okay. Any other questions,
Fine,
comments?
thank you.
Yes.
All right. Any from the board? Hey, thank you very much.
I want to
Appreciate
thank you for your continued support.
Thank you. All right, we have on page 119, the Council of Churches Janus Center, 119 and 120, $5,000 flat year over year. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Thank you for staying in a late night.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dale Holder, and I'm the director of the Janus Center for Youth in Crisis.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Holder. And welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions on this item? Mrs. McCarthy-Vahey.
Thank you. Do any of your referrals come from the Fairfield Counseling folks?
No, we haven't received any referrals from Fairfield Counseling. They mostly come from the schools, parents, or other community providers.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone have anything on this budget?
61 came from Fairfield.
Seeing none, anybody from the public to comment now? Sir, thank you for staying tonight.
And thank you for your continued support. Thank you.
All right. Grassmere by the Sea, which is pages 121 through 122. This is $65,000, and it is consistent with the prior year.
Did you get lost?
Window dressing.
Excuse me, please.
You don't work here anymore. Make a motion.
Please introduce yourselves.
My name is Lou Lerman. I'm representing the board of Grassmere. Marianne Chamberlain is also here from the board.
Welcome.
So you have 33% of the board members here tonight.
And Ken Plato from the Jewish Home, representing his administrative support.
Great,
Is there any
thank you.
questions?
Welcome. All right, so we're at $65,000. I think our prior first selectman cut this last year, actually.
And we're
Aren't
happy.
you glad you came?
We're happy to have a new
Welcome back.
first selectman and get more money if that's possible.
All right, so do we have any questions, comments, or concerns on this budget? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. And
We just wanted, if you don't mind, just
Sure.
Well, I
just
do want
offer
to
a few
thank
words.
you.
And thank you.
Thank you for the yearly donations. When I started on the board about 5 years, this is not going to be long, I know it's a long night, but I've been on the board for 5 years, and when I got on the board, there were 14 to 16 board members. There's now 6. And as you can imagine, that has a real impact in our fundraising abilities. And so we do thank the town for their generous support every year.
Well, thank you
This
very
is
much.
about 6% of the budget in rough terms. It was about 25% of the budget about 10 years ago, the town contribution, just to give you a sense of magnitude. And the only other quick, if you don't mind, comment, which is kind of a peripheral, but I thought I should mention it. It's not directly related to Grassmere, but I thought you'd be interested in hearing. About a year ago, over the last year, the Jewish Home has started and subsidized an elder care abuse prevention program, which is becoming quite a, unfortunately, significant thing with the amount of concern out there and victimization of seniors, and we've taken that on as a mission and intend to expand it. But the Grassmere program in adult day is such a need. Over 100 people in this area are using this center.
If anyone has any questions about Grassmere, They offer tours. It's a mile or two away from here, and I think you'd be really impressed if you went and just took a tour.
Thank you very much. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming out tonight.
very
We
much.
appreciate it. It's good
Hopefully
seeing you
not
again.
too many late nights, folks. Good luck.
Thank you. All right. We're going to go to page 123, the Sullivan McKinney Elder Housing. It's 123 to 124, and the budget is flat year over year at $5,000. Is there any questions or comments on this budget? Good evening.
I'm Carolyn Durkee. I am the president of Sullivan McKinney Elder Housing Board of Directors, and I'm here tonight to ask you for your support again for the things that we're doing. I think you have a letter that has shown all the different things we've been doing in the past year, and our reason for asking for this money is to get our courtyard up to code ADA. We have a gazebo that we fixed up and made it compliant, but we need to make the rest of it compliant for the people to come out.
Thank you, Ms. Sturgey.
And we'd really like to invite anyone who wants to come, just call the office, and we'd be glad to set up a tour for you. The place is really, really beautiful. They've done a beautiful job. If you go outside and see, we have all new signs, we have new windows, new doors. Inside, we have, the whole community room is done, and kitchen is being done, and they have all new rugs, and everything is compliant.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And any questions, comments from board members? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, thank you, and thanks for coming out so late. All right. Page 25, 125 and 126 is the Fairfield Arts Center. There's some commentary here. This budget has been zeroed out for this year. The funding request of $10,000 was included in community and economic development, fees and professional services for special event planning for the community. So, any comments on this one? Seeing none at this time, we'll move on to the Kennedy Center, which is pages 127 and 128.
Fairfield Arts, is that FTC?
No.
No, that was FAC.
No. Yeah. Okay, so pages 127 and 128. Good evening.
Evening. How are you tonight?
Good, and yourself. Thank you for being
I'm
here.
hanging in there.
There you go. All right.
I'm Joanne McMullen. I'm Vice President of Development for the Kennedy Center.
Great, Joanne. Thank you for being here this evening. Do we have any questions or comments on the Kennedy Center? Seeing none from board members, anything you'd like to say briefly? Or?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for continuing to support us, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming out on a late evening and
Thank you.
sitting there patiently. Anybody from the public? All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, on pages 129 and 130, the Mill River Wetland Committee. $5,000, no increase year over year. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Charlene Braun-Schindler. I am the president of the board of the Mill River Wetland Committee.
Well, thank you for being here.
No problem.
Do we have any questions, comments from board members on this budget? All right, seeing none, any from the public? Seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming.
And thank you for supporting environmental education for the youth. And you can all be guides. We now have online training for indoor training. Now you don't have to come to outdoor training, and come and join us.
And, Mr. Chairman?
You are or did? Third grade? Great, great.
Did you pass?
Thank you.
And I went with my third graders class.
Yeah. Well, next year you'll be able to do fourth grade online. Third grade will start online next fall, and fifth grade and sixth grade are starting this spring, so.
Very nice.
I know more about bugs than fishes.
Well, and perhaps a plug for the Garden Expo.
Oh, yes, yes, Garden Expo's this weekend. So please, that's our main financial event to help support us.
Well, make sure,
It's it.
use it, come on.
Use
you're
it,
on TV.
okay.
Come on.
Ludlow High School, Saturday from 9 to 5, Sunday, 10 to 5, and Sunday from 10 to 4. And we have about 80 exhibitors coming. We've got we got a great number of speakers, and they're really good. A lot of gardening and a lot of interesting things. You can check our Garden Expo website, and if you ever want to see what's on Mill River Wetland Committee, the River Lab program is on the River Lab, river-lab.org website.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, great.
You have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Pages 131 and 132, the Fairfield Theater Company. This is new this year, although I believe it's a change in accounting.
Yeah, I believe we've just moved these items were, and Paul, you can fill in here, but they were kept within the DPW budget in the past. So this is not an increase by any means, but these are actual costs that the town has been contributing. These can be netted out against rental payments we get, which I think come in around $23,000 annually. But Mr. Hiller, why don't you fill us in on a little more accurately?
These basically are the costs which we incurred, tracked by the Public Works Department over the previous 12 months, specifically for, and just for electricity and heating fuel. We have received revenue in the past from the Fairfield Theater Company under the lease agreement, which was signed some 5 years ago. And I'm open to questions.
Go to Mr. Walsh.
I guess I have a lot of questions in regards to how this is being broken out, because if this is being contained in this section, seems like would be comparable to all the other nonprofits that are in this section, and this is a completely different situation. We have a lease with them, and that lease requires that we pay electricity and gas and also maintenance on that building. To me, this should be in the book as its own item, not in the nonprofit item, but so that we can compare the revenues versus the expenses. And I just don't see it, because it makes it look like we're giving them $39,000 a year. It should not be we're giving them $39,000 a year. This is kind of a business situation where we have a lease, a business lease. They're supposed to give us $2 a ticket to be paid quarterly, and we should be netting out those expenses. I checked, Mr. Hiller, I checked with your department today on where we stand today with revenue, because it's not split out in revenue as a specific line. These rentals are grouped together in a line that's just called rental income on town properties, which is a bunch of things that total $142,000 in this year's upcoming budget. To date, for this current year, 2012 year, there is
from July of last year.
Fiscal 2012. So from last July to date, the total income brought in to date is $1,051. Because they had a large accrual from last year. They hadn't paid their previous year's amounts. So although the amounts I think that came in during this year have been about $12,000 and change, $11,000 approximately was still due as an accrual matter from the previous year. So currently, to date, we have $1,051 in revenue, and we're pretty much tracking, from what I understand the numbers are from your department, approximately these numbers. So based on being 2/3 of the way through the year, we would track at $1,500 worth of income and $39,000 worth of costs. And that does not include the costs. I mean, what I would really love to see is, in addition to that department, is the maintenance costs. And I've requested them from the Public Works Department. I've not been provided with them, but we have to pay maintenance on that building. So what are the maintenance costs specifically on that building, so we can see what the true cost is of us having this organization in a town-run building?
Yes, Mr. Brockfield.
Yeah, actually, just to throw one extra piece of information on top of what you're saying, Jim, as long as we're, Paul, are we providing this building rent-free to the organization?
The terms of the lease basically require that they are to pay $2 for every paid admission they have at the facility. The other side of that is, if they don't hit that mark, they are to pay what would be the real estate taxes that property has an assessed value, though we're not paying taxes on it. It has an assessment, as does every town building or religious building, or Fairfield University has an assessed value, as an example. And it's to be, if they don't meet that, if they don't meet the revenue from the $2 fee, they are to pay the real estate taxes.
Let me interrupt you,
What does it
Paul.
mean
What,
if they-
yeah, what does
That
mean?
would mean, let me just finish.
Okay.
That roughly, I don't have the exact figure, that's roughly $42,000.
So, but does that mean they pay the greater of $2 a ticket?
Yes.
Or $42,000 in
Correct.
taxes?
Correct.
Based
Based
on-
on the current mill rate.
Based on the current mill rate?
Yeah, but
Doesn't sound like they're paying it.
I don't believe that's the way, it doesn't read the greater of the two, Paul.
It's,
I mean,
well,
two things.
this
On one,
past year, for
given-
example, the amount
given
that we received last year on their admissions, roughly $39,000. We can give a report to this board as to exactly what we received, which, as Mr. Walsh points out, there was received in the month of February, some $11,000, which cleared up the accrual that existed on our books as of June 30th. So based on the figures that they provided us, they have paid us in full through June 30th.
Mr. Chair, the rationale for taking a look and breaking this out separately is to kind of highlight and kind of make this whole transaction a little more transparent. This may not be the best way. This is the kind of the first year we've presented in this regard. And I think that in terms of looking at how we report on our leases, this might be a candidate for kind of let us experiment with how to present this to the board. However, keeping this buried in Department of Public Works budget didn't let us see what our costs were with respect to this, and so the idea was to break it out so we could at least see that. In a revenue and income situation, we may need to look at it a little bit differently than we've done here, but the idea was to put it here to start that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Tetreau. I'm going to go back to Mr. Brockfeld, who I think was complete.
Yeah, what I would recommend both for this board, and editorially, I think it's a great organization. Actually, I think it's a wonderful thing for the town. I use it a lot, so I think it's terrific. But we should know what the true costs and benefits are. So I would recommend, Paul, that, or request from the board, that we see something that shows on one side the revenue that's coming in, and you've explained that to us a bit, and on the other side, the way I would look at it as a business person is I would want to look at the heat and the electricity, plus the maintenance, and plus I would love to see a guesstimate of what that building would rent for if we were not providing it to someone, because that's the true cost to us. The true cost is not anything but that. The opportunity cost, right. And by the way, that is not an exact number. It's going to have to be, by some definition, a guess, but we should be able to estimate to some extent what that might be worth in the open market, and that would represent our cost side, and then obviously you've described to some extent the revenues, and then we can agree as a town and as a board whether or not it's a worthwhile endeavor to continue funding it that way. And I think Mr. Walsh is correct. I would think that it deserves its own, spot here in the budget, separate from the way it is now. And I understand it was just a first crack, Mr. Tetreau. So.
Is it something on top of that? Yeah, Mr. DeWitt.
No, I agree with Mr. Walsh that there's no way this should be under nonprofits, because this is clearly a business transaction. And to expand on Mr. Brockfeld's, to just lump it under town properties, 142, 124,000, whatever that number was, no, we need a real breakout of this. This is no different than doing the same thing with the golf course, right?
Yeah. To start, I think there seems to be some debate over what the contract actually calls for in terms of revenue. So I think on a go-forward basis, what the contract calls for in terms of revenue, it's going to be an important item to know. And then I think looking backwards, and I thank the administration for breaking this out more clearly this year. But I think we do need to know over the last several years, and the easiest way to do it would be a cash basis. What's the cash revenue every year we've been getting? And what's been our cash outlay? Let's start there, because the numbers I'm hearing doesn't even sound like we're breaking even here right now, just on covering the heat and utility cost, let alone the items that Mr. Brockfield points out, such as the maintenance or that Mr. Walsh ties out. So the easiest way to do it is to say, go back to the books and records, find out how much the Fairfield Theater Company has paid us over the last several years, and for that same time frame, let's know how much we paid in heat, utility, and to the extent we can break out, maintenance, so we can see what that is. It'd also be interesting to know what the contract terms are relative to when those payments are due and whether those payments have been coming on the basis that the contract calls for them to come.
I think the couple of points in that. The easiest part of what we said is to give you what the revenue has been on a historic basis since inception, which I believe was 2006. We've also kept records as to the utility costs. I think I'd have to check with Public Works as to what they've been able to identify and break out as far as the maintenance costs on it. And obviously, to
Sure.
Mr. Brackfeld's point, the opportunity cost is, that's a little more nebulous.
Let's see where we are. Where I'm at is very simply, let's see where we are on a cash basis.
Correct.
Then we can go to the opportunity cost and the rest, which is a different discussion, being that we have a lease. But the other question I have, and I'm sorry to, are they paying us at the time frame they should be paying us? We just heard that we had an accrual on the books from last June for $12,000 or so.
11.
11.
Yep.
Right? And I guess that wasn't cleared up until January, February?
February.
Okay, that's
8 months.
8
And
months.
as Mr. Walsh is correct, the only monies that we have received for the current fiscal year are slightly over $1,000. And we have relied, most of the time, we have audited, gone in at times. Our internal auditor has
That's
gone
going to be
in
my next question.
on occasion to spot check on a monthly basis, not an entire year, but gone in to see. They have a fairly sophisticated ticket system, which will show the ticket sales and the revenues that they've generated by the performances that have been held there. That's a very easy calculation. If they have 120 people there, they owe us $240 for the night.
But I don't know whether, are your audit privileges restricted to the $2 a ticket, or are they broader than that?
When we've gone there in the past, when Ms. Nolfi has gone there in the past, we haven't, encountered any difficulties in looking at their operations. But only
Do you have the right
only
to
as
do
to
that?
their admissions, obviously.
Right. I mean, I think it's a valid point that we don't know what this agreement is and what it's costing, right?
Right. I mean, we're more concerned, and based on the contract, one thing is clear, is that there is this $2 per head charge.
Sure. But I'm going to go to Mr. Bolito and then Mr. Walsh, okay? Come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make a formal request, and we may have gotten this document already, but if we can get a copy of the actual lease, because I think to me, to try to shoot in the dark about what the obligations are, unless we have the document in
Right.
front of us, we can't really do that adequately, so I would make a
Bring
formal
that,
request to get a copy of the lease.
Wednesday night.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Walsh?
This has been an issue that's been going on for years. I mean, this whole income issue. I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, I was asking questions like this when I was on the RTM, and it concerns me that the contract's as clear as it can be. I mean, these payments are to be made quarterly. They're not anywhere near being made quarterly. We are basically the creditor of last resort for this organization. We get paid last when they have money, when they decide to give it to us. It is not coming in the way the contract says, and never has been, to be quite honest with everybody here. And something needs to be done about it. And clearly, from my reading, which I pulled a copy of the contract, they're in breach, and they've been in breach for quite some time. And I think that's why it needs to become its own budgetary item, so we can start tracking this and decide whether this is something we want to go forward with. And I do compliment the first selectman for the first time pulling this out and having transparency on this issue, because, these numbers, like the electric and gas numbers, I think were new to a lot of us. So I do give him credit. I just think that it should be its own line item because the gas and electric are not the only expenses. And I think for us to fully look at this, we need to have a breakout of what the expenses are, such as what DPW is doing for repair items on this. So, thank you.
Are there any other leased items that fall into this same category where we're incurring expenses?
I would defer to Mr. Hiller on that.
Are there any other?
Are there any other arrangements, and we don't want to, I think it's fair to say that we don't want to pick on any organization. We want to make sure that when we enter an agreement like this, we know the economics of the agreement. So is there any other organization which has a similar arrangement with us where we should be asking for a similar?
The only other outside group, obviously, is Child's Garden at Oldfield School, who does pay on a timely basis consistently. They are
Do we
paying.
have any direct expenses such as this related to that?
No, we have, one of the problems there is, you see, the utility costs are not, I don't know
Not
what
separately
percentage of that
metered.
building they've got, but it's, less than half. And we utilize it for public health nursing and senior center and stuff of that nature, and so it would be difficult to, other than if you did it on a square foot
An
basis.
allocation.
And Child's Garden does pay a supplemental fee for utilities. It's nominal, but there is a, beyond their rent.
Can we just get a breakout of what the revenues for that are, please? So that we
Sure.
can,
It also may make sense, especially in a case like that where they've done, I believe they've done some additional improvements to the space also, Paul?
Yes.
So looking in terms of what TI work, much like the theater company, and I don't have the details of how much was actually invested, but the lease call for as much as $500,000 for them to make an investment in the space to build out the theater.
That's great. I don't have the lease, so I'm not, this is, quite frankly, this is new information, I think, to most of us on the board. So, Mr. DeWitt, and then I think Mr. Walsh.
So just so I'm clear, we're saying of the $142,000 revenue item for rental income of town properties, we only have 2 situations where DPW is providing maintenance? Because I find that hard to believe.
No, there are more. For example, included in that number, Mr. Grace's, where Mr. Grace pays a rental fee on his residence up across on Hoyden's Hill Lane. He's paying that, and we're responsible for the maintenance of that property.
And the maintenance of that comes from a DPW budget?
Yes.
So why wouldn't we want to know everything under that 142,000? We broke one out, and I'm with everyone here that I appreciate this one being broken out, but it's just scratching the surface for me that there's a bunch of properties is making up that revenue line, and we're not seeing the, accompanying.
I think the one thing on this one, I think that this is one of the easier ones to identify, first off. And I think both the first selectman and I and others Mrs. Gardner, were a little taken back when we saw the amount of utility costs that we were incurring at this facility.
But we're incurring utilities at every one of our
Well,
town-owned
we are, but I think this one, as I say, was easily identifiable. I mean, we keep a track on every town facility as to what we had. And some of them were, as I mentioned before, where there's kind of a co-tenancy, for example, Oldfield School, where we have that. And in Mr. Grace's case, we could track that one a little easy because it's.
Any other, yes, Mr. Walsh?
It's news to me.
Mr. Hiller, is there, out of the $142,000 that's budgeted for revenue, is there a number for the Fairfield Theater Company for revenue that we have in the budget? Out of that
40,000, just over 40,000.
Just over 40,000? Okay. Thank you.
And that's also part of the report, which is given annually, I believe it was given in December or January, to the RTM as far as rental properties, as to where the rental properties are, what they are, and.
Can we see a copy of that, please?
Sure.
I know we probably got it in our packet, I just don't recall it.
You would have, but
Yeah.
that's a couple months back.
Yeah, several months back.
Mr. Allen, my thought, I saw that report when it was before the RTM. I don't think Fairfield Theater Company was on it because I thought it was a long-term lease. I thought that report that Ms. Kennelly presents is really only for short-term.
I don't know. Ms. Kennelly has generated that report.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item right now? I do think we have a significant follow-up on this that I would encourage us to get as quickly as possible if we could, so we could finalize this. We don't have many follow-up items, but this is certainly one of them, I think. Does any member of the public have anything they'd like to say on this? Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if you could use the microphone.
Mayor, 720 Banks North Road. The chair asked for cash flow information.
Yeah.
There's more financial information involved with this.
Yep.
There's leasehold improvements.
Absolutely.
There's accruals, et cetera. So I'd suggest the chair broaden its request.
Sure. Is it available? I was trying to give the most simple information.
I don't know what's available, but I remember when we
Right.
discussed this on the Board of Finance when the leases were first
This was years ago.
offered, even though I don't think we voted on them. But I remember it was
We
a
wouldn't
discussion.
have.
We wouldn't have, shouldn't have. But it was a discussion item, so I know.
Yeah.
That's my recollection.
Any financial information that's available on this would be greatly appreciated. I think speed is of the essence. I think very simply, I want to know where we are from a cash basis. And then I think to Mr. Bolito and Mr. Walsh's point, what does the contract call for? The key provisions of the contract, I think, are going to be critical. From my perspective, does anybody disagree with that request?
Just still want the actual contract, I don't want highlights.
That's fine. That's fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
if we can
Yes,
get
Mr. Walsh.
maintenance numbers to the extent that they may be available, since we are, from my reading of the lease, responsible for maintenance on the building.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your comments. All right. Any other public comments on that item? Seeing none, we'll go to Pilot House, pages 133 and 134. This is $8,000, and it's flat year over year. Any questions, comments, concerns on this budget? Seeing none. Anybody from the public? None. Okay, we'll go to the Center for Women and Families, pages 135 and 136, and it's $6,100, and it's flat year over year. Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Chairman, because of my closeness and support of this organization in the past, I'm going to recuse myself to avoid the appearance of an impropriety. So I would ask that Ms. Baccamazo mark the record of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Susan Schnetzer, I'm the Director of Grants and Programs at the Center for Women and Families.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for saying, I'm sorry you're so late tonight. So,
Feel free to double it, that would be fine.
only if we go past midnight.
There you go.
All right. Do we have any questions, comments on this budget? Anybody?
Just a comment, thank
Mr.
you, and last but not least, I would say.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody? Seeing none, none from the public? I do want to thank you for sitting there. My apologies for being here so late. And if you have something you want to say,
Thank you.
please.
Just very quickly, because we all
Please.
want to leave. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance for not only supporting us through this municipal funding, but supporting our satellite center. That is, I'm afraid to say where it is. It's out on Mona Terrace because I know you're doing all your other work out there. But it's a wonderful location. We have great collaborations with the Senior Center, Jewish Home, the Police Department, the Town of Fairfield, and most recently really strengthened and it's not in our proposal, the relationship with the public schools. And one of our community educators is working on the climate change. That's really the state mandate now that all schools address bullying in a more comprehensive way. So we are volunteering and dedicating our services to the Town of Fairfield, and we look forward to continuing our relationship. And
Thank you very much for all the
again.
hard work.
Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
support.
All right. Everyone, before we dismiss for the night, or adjourn for the night, we just went through the private agencies as we do every year. And for the last couple of years, we've had several discussions on them. and the process by which private agencies get their funding from the town, or lose their funding from the town, or increase their funding from the town. There was a interdepartmental, for lack of a better word, or intergovernmental commission put together last year to look at this process. And due to a lot of unforeseen circumstances, such as the Metro Center issue and some of the other issues, the committee was not able to meet as frequently as they would have liked or come to some resolution or conclusion. I think it's very important, and I think this body and myself on behalf of this body would like to urge that committee to be put back in place and for them to come back before not only ourselves, but the Board of Selectmen, and if they so choose, the RTM, to discuss the process by which these not-for-profit agencies can manage their funding and or communicate with the town. I think we all thought that it was a bit too subjective and that we wanted to understand more clearly, as Mr. DeWitt, who was on the committee, pointed out tonight, some of the formulas, some of the missions, how they're serving the community, how they're saving our tax dollars, and how these worthwhile institutions become involved and funded by our town. So I would ask, I know Mr. DeWitt has been involved, Mr. Tetreau, and the other members of the Board of Selectmen. I would ask that committee start its work again. It is my hope, our hope, that they do so, and that they can, we can put this issue to bed. So, Mr. DeWitt, please.
I actually contacted Ms. McCarthy. We were on the committee, as was Mr. Brockfield.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Of course, Ms. McCarthy Vahey, at that point, was our RTM representative, so I think now she's going to take the Selectman slot, which was Ms. Stenix.
If she gets appointed.
So, well, sorry, or maybe I'm overstepping my bounds there, but asked if she would still be interested, and I'll reach out to the rest of the committee.
Please work with the first Selectman.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Tetreau, do you have anything
lots
you'd
of
like to
things
say?
to do.
Yeah, did we have RTM support on that committee?
We did.
Is somebody going to reach out to the RTM?
Kristen and Joe.
Is somebody going to reach out to Mr. Steele? And
We absolutely can. If that's what you would like us to do, we would definitely do that.
was that Board of Selectmen initiated committee, or?
We asked that it be initiated, but the Board of Selectmen, I think, actually put it together.
Very good. We'll take it from there.
Great. With that, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? We have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everybody. Good night.